Welcome to the Strategy and Community Committee meeting for the 10th of September. Just in regards to health and safety, everyone in the room is well aware, but in the event of any emergency, exiting out one of these two doors and assembling in the car park next to the St John's building. Apologies, it looks like we have a full committee today, so there are no apologies to be recorded. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? Fantastic. We do have a recording device and we are being live streamed. Is there any announced urgent business? Thank you. And just in regards to the plan for the day, Janice has just let me know that we are able to adjust the day in regards to timing and that workshop that we have planned on the conclusion of the meeting. Okay, the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting from the 12th of March 2024. I was on leave of absence here, so thank you, Karen, for chairing that meeting. I'm just going to do a quick page turn for corrections if there are any. Page 5. 6 and 7, 8 and 9, and page
just on page 8, the third bullet point, it just says that I was to forward contact details of a candidate for the age-friendly plan coordination. It was really for the age-friendly advisory committee membership, so it's just that it wasn't really the plan coordination, so you just have that cleared up. That'd be great, thank you.
Yep, we could just change that wording. Anything on page 9, page 10? Fantastic. Thank you. Seconded Vanessa. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry.
Seconded by Vanessa. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? And I'll abstain because I was absent. Right, matters arising from those minutes that aren't covered in the agenda today. Anything on page 5, page 6, page 7, 8, 9, and 10. Thank you, Tom.
In the updated work programme, it says walking and cycling strategy have stalled and need to be assigned to an officer when there is capacity. Do we have any more information on that?
We have a workshop on walking and cycling / riding strategy at the conclusion of today's meeting.
And through you, Madam Chair, we have appointed someone as a senior policy planner, so they've been assigned to that, and that was Andrew. You may recall he led a workshop on the council submission on the regional policy statement.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Actually, that just made me think about the climate change advisor. Have we?
No,
We haven't really appointed that position just yet.
no, no, we were unsuccessful. We got yeah, someone signed a contract and then changed their mind. So
Okay.
we'll
go out to the market again, will we? Or?
I haven't decided what I'm going to do. Nicola's is still on leave, and I'm fairly fully occupied with the planning team at the moment. So I'll probably wait for a couple of weeks.
Any other matters arising? Right, fantastic. Then Claire, I'll welcome you to the table for our first decision item in regards to the submissions on the draft long-term plan and in regards to water harvesting. And that's on page 11 of your agenda. Thanks, Claire. Welcome.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Keepy is the gift that keeps on giving. As you're aware, some of the submissions we received referred to things relating to water conservation. The 4 submissions that are listed in the appendix to this report are not necessarily identical, but they have common themes. In order to make a water harvesting arrangement mandatory, it will be necessary to change the district plan. The cost would depend on what the requirements were, obviously less if it was happened to be a new build than if it were a retrospective fitting. I asked Kerry and he suggested that for one downpipe, a relatively modest sized tank would be somewhere between.
Sorry, Claire.
For one downpipe would be somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000 for a per tank. And the benefits would vary on different parts of the district based on rainfall. Any questions?
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, councillor Davies.
That seems an incredible amount of money just for one downpipe. I'm trying to think about, I must have a lot of dozen downpipes on my property. I would probably want them all to go into one tank rather than into individual ones.
At the time of the new build, if they're done together, it's possible to link them during drainage. If you're doing it retrospectively, linking them together during drainage would be very expensive. But it is possible to do that at the time of a new build.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I guess my comment around some of the submissions were perhaps thinking about from here forward, you know, and on a new build, and should we be considering that action as a forward-thinking council around retaining and capturing stormwater, and particularly, well, right across the district actually. So, you know, I do respect that, you know, the retrospective costs, you know, might be considered, but not too dissimilar to the rapid numbering, you know, that maybe we should perhaps consider how we could be a facilitator of capturing stormwater going forward. I think that has some merit in that, you know, certainly not a new discussion that we have had around the table. So I'm open to that as a forward-thinking, future-proofing our district.
I would speak in support.
Yeah, thanks.
Of what Marion just said actually.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. Anything to add? Before I move on? Thank you, Karen.
I'd speak in support of that too. I think, given what we know about climate change and so on, it does make sense that we, you know, support people to capture the water that will naturally come from their houses, to help offset the supply that council has to provide to meet the needs of a growing population. And I also wonder about whether we could look into a mechanism for people who do want to retrospectively do something, to have a subsidised option, you know, perhaps through council as a large supplier, or, you know, whatever. If they could be a conduit, then that might mean that people who do want to do the right thing in the long term, it would help the council. Maybe there could be a way of, you know, negotiating a cheaper rate on the cost of tanks or something like that. I'm not sure how that works, but I think that sort of thing in principle has been done in other contexts, hasn't it, with Bokashi and a number of things in the past. So, I mean, I think it would be really good to explore that and just take it a bit further rather than going, oh, it's all too tricky.
Yeah, good points. Councillor?
Look further through the chair, further to what Karen has just said, actually, is it possible for us to perhaps prepare a report that actually investigates retrospective options and also options for new builds? Whether we act as a conduit for both options, or whether whatever incentives we could provide, whatever options we could be up to.
Thank you. Madam Mayor?
Yeah, that's great. I think we're all very like-minded in our thinking, but Judith, can I just ask you through the chair, for rural, is it part of the district plan rules that they have a tank for firefighting? Is that a 50,000 litre or whatever? So there is capacity already in our district plan for that captures the rural side of it. Is that correct?
There is, yes, there are rules around requiring people to have firefighting water.
Yeah, okay. So that, it kind of makes me think about, you know, for our urban properties and how we can be to capture the, you know, the concept that Karen and Vanessa have spoken, that, you know, what can we do to support our urban dwellers? And I'm happy to consider the retrospective, but actually I think the forward thinking would be that a holding tank for garden use, I mean, it does exactly what we've been talking about. It avoids the pressure on peak times of water, that we're not actually watering our grass out on our back lawn with treated water. You know, I mean, there's so many benefits to it from an urban perspective. So I'm really keen for us to consider that as a concept going forward. So, but if we've got the rural sorted, you know, we just need to kind of consider what's in the district plan currently and what we might need to consider going forward.
Yeah, sure. I wonder, can I just delve a little bit into, you know, the rural thing, because the provision of water for firefighting wouldn't necessarily be water collected. It could be water stored, you know, from
Because your tank for firefighting water has to be full.
Yeah.
So if you're having another tank, you'd have to have another tank.
Yeah, for your household storage.
Yes.
I know that Kerry indicated that the implications for Henma Springs and Royal River would be very different from those for Emberley and you know, the inland versus the coast is the effects are quite different. Yeah, because of different rainfalls.
So Claire, could that mean that anything that we did in the district plan was specific to particular parts of the district, as we would do with urban and rural?
It would be appropriate to do some calculations before forming a view.
Sure.
So the size of the capacity tank might vary.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Dave's had his
Okay,
hand up.
thank you,
long.
Dave. We'll go to you.
Just thinking, I think it's the district plan to enable people to be able to do it rather than have to do it. Because I was sitting there thinking what the $5,000 cost could be in that. And all you guys that want to water your gardens and that, and think you're going to do it under pressure. If you're going to put a tank in your house, it's not going to be under pressure. So all of a sudden you're putting on a cost of a person that they need to have their own pump to pump that water for that garden water. It's just not water out of things. So I definitely am not keen at forcing people to do things because there's unintended consequences of if you store water, it's just not available. And back to the rural, I thought when we subdivided our pollution block, we had to have a tank because we had to join the water supply because we couldn't, like what I was used to in the Wairarapa, you take roof water for your water supply. So I thought we had to have water. I never didn't know it was anything to do with fire.
Well, yeah, but potentially you could end up with 3 tanks. So you could end up with firefighting water tank, a rural water supply tank, and then a stormwater, a drainage tank.
I don't know what about the one tank. Anyway. But yeah, so just be cautious about you start thinking because you know, pumps for houses don't come at no cost.
Yep.
And it's an ongoing cost.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you guys are gonna sit there and say, oh, I don't want to look at the neighbour's tank. And then you put it in ground and it's even worse. So just be careful. There's always
you're right.
Yeah, and you're right, Dave, because I mean, at the moment, people do have the ability to choose to do those things under the district plan. I think what we're discussing is whether we encourage it with some sort of facilitation, or if we, you know, do consider
it's
some
nice to
mandatory
have, but I
stuff.
don't want to put money towards it. But if they can get a cheaper tank, that's fine. But not putting any money towards it. Sure money.
Now I know that you've both had your hand up, so I'll come to Karen and then I'll come to you.
I just wanted to, and this may be a question for Judith, I'm aware that there are some new builds in Waikari, for instance, where there are stormwater tanks have been required. So I just wondered what the current requirements are.
Yes, so it's a little bit situational.
Right.
So I suspect that you'll have them to deal with the stormwater, so roof water, stormwater. And then it's in effect a retention tank or a detention tank. So the water goes into the tank.
Yeah.
And then is released slowly into the environment. So it's to manage those peak flows on site, so we don't have huge volumes of stormwater being discharged
Coming
into
into the
the
system all in one go.
yeah. So in some areas, there's a requirement for tanks to manage that.
So if it's a detention tank, and say we had a big down, the water builds up in the tank, and then, but the idea is that it actually just slowly drains out. It's not retained in the tank.
No, it will slowly drain out
Yeah.
to wherever what the height of the outlet is.
Okay, so it's quite a different thing.
Yeah, that's something sort of different again.
Yeah.
That's managing, peak flows.
Peak flows.
Yeah. I think the other thing to consider is that if we think about Amberley and some of the smaller sections, depending on the size of the tank, a large tank is going to be pretty limiting in terms of what's left on the site.
In the urban space, in the urban
So
sections.
there is, and we have tried the incentivizing before, and money was set aside for that, and no one picked up the incentive. So, but that's not to say that we can't things. Was a different place that we can't try that again, but I think I'd be advocating for a non-regulatory approach to this rather than the cost and the implications of making this a requirement may change what happens in our urban areas.
Thanks. I was going to go to Tom and then I'll come to you, Mary.
Sorry.
Yeah, having been on water restrictions in Hanmer for about 6 months of this year, I think that if we do this, incentivize it, I think certainly we would try to get it into the new builds and then perhaps look at some, it may be longer to work out retrospective solutions, but we could at least start fairly quickly by having it mandatory on all new builds. And with hundreds of houses coming in Hanmer, that might be a really good idea because, the drought situation in the whole of the country does seem to be fairly critical. And when we're banned from washing the garden and banned from washing our cars and things like that, this could be really, really helpful.
So am I hearing, Tom, that you'd be advocating for a mandatory regulatory approach?
I would be happy with that for new builds, but also giving us time to explore the possibilities of retrospective. Certainly my house hasn't got a tanker, but I would certainly think about to do that.
Given those points that Judith just made around the footprint of
Yes.
residential section sizes, for example, in Amberley, and I imagine similar in Hanmer.
Some of those new sections now are 400 and 500 square meters. There's not much room for a tank, but I'm sure creativity and innovation will work a way out of doing that.
Mari.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think this has been a really useful discussion, and I guess the paper was to actually kind of tease out where we're heading. But I've heard different sides of the argument. I'm still really keen to consider that as a concept. And I just wonder whether we need to have whether this is an issues and options or a workshop time, to actually tease out some of the comments that, we've all kind of contributed to this, but I think on an incentive
as opposed to regulatory probably sits more comfortably for me just at the moment, but I kind of need to understand this full suite of issues, and I think that's what this paper is about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Vanessa.
Through the chair, I would like to sort of look at some form of cost exercise before we can, I'm not keen on the mandatory option. But I would be in support of what Murray suggested, I think, discussion.
Yeah, so just, oh, sorry, Claire.
One of the other matters that Kerry raised was the fact that the benefit would depend on the size of your roof. So it might be that for some very small houses, that this might have limited benefit.
Which is another consideration in regards to, you know, mandatory versus voluntary or, you know, incentivized. So it sounds to me like just drawing in all the threads of the conversation, that it is something that we're keen to at least explore in a little bit more depth, and consider, you know, what the benefits might be and what the consequences might be as well. So are we looking for a direction for officers to perhaps do a little bit more work around those benefits and consequences, and even some costing? Is that what I'm hearing around that?
I'm pretty neutral at it. If the market will sort it out, I think we're going to do it. It's not going to happen. So, no, probably.
Right. Okay, Vanessa.
Oh, look, I'm definitely keen to look at exploring it further. I think as council, we can play a crucial role in helping to incentivise the district to conserve water, and I think it's a smart move. So I would definitely encourage that we look into it further.
Yep. And I guess I was thinking, just drawing back to what Judith said, is that, you know, we have offered these incentives in the past and they haven't been taken up, but I do think the world has moved on, and, you know, we have, you know, different concerns and considerations now. So just in regards,
I'll put it in perspective, we're saving the world. I remember Hamish telling me the whole of South Ward, what was it, 60 litres a second was all the requirements of water? 40?
No, I think it's around 60. It's around 250 litres per second across the whole district.
So in perspective of saving the world in water, 60 litres a second is enough water to irrigate 120 hectares. So you're not saving the world of water. So just putting it into perspective, it's all good and symbolic.
But 60 litres a second to do 120 hectares is time, not the actual per second that you need to. It's how many hours.
The 60 litres a second.
For how many hours?
I'm just saying in the whole area, and irrigation is pretty important. So in the, all this symbolism, it makes you feel good. It's not in the whole scheme of the water, in the whole of Mary, the whole Huranui, it's not a lot of water.
I guess though, for
I
those,
use 400 litres a second. The whole of South Ward loses 80 litres a second.
for those people who are in the situation that Tom is,
Oh, you get
has
that.
said he has been in this year where he's been under water restrictions, and that certainly has been the case in Amberley. Then there is no water in the gardens, so this gives an option. But I think also, you know, it's been raised as well that there could be other benefits in regards to the discharge of stormwater being slowed down in those peak times, which, you know, has been an issue in Amberley Urban, for example. So I just wondered, do we need a formal resolution in order to move that on, or Claire, do you have enough direction from the committee?
My understanding is that the committee would like a paper regarding the options and possibly a workshop.
I think that would be, is everybody in agreement with that?
That's all.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, I'll just do a quick sweep round. Tom, anything else to add?
No, nothing.
Murray?
Oh, no, I support that. I think it would be, at least we can dive into it and actually understand the issues or the unintended consequences, and then we can move forward a bit more.
I support it. I think on the eve of the water done well and the changes ahead, I think it's a benefit to the community that we at least have the conversation.
Thank you. Karen?
I support it and I think it's timely.
Yeah, fantastic. And it feels to me like we are, by at least delving a little bit further and getting that information, we're doing real justice to the long-term plan submission process and those points that were made by those submitters as well. Excellent. Thank you, Claire. Good discussion. Okay, moving on to information items. So page 17, the update on rapid numbering. Welcome.
Hi.
Lovely to have you here, Liz. Sorry, I forgot your name for a minute. That's terrible, isn't it? I'm just moving straight over to you, Liz, just to give us an update on where we're at, and trusting that councillors present have read the paper.
So I just want to provide a bit of an update on what I've been up to in the last 6 months and where I'm heading with rapid numbering over the next sort of 6 months. So I've brought into place a rapid numbering plate process. So as of the 1st of July, where any building consent that comes in for a new dwelling, minor dwelling unit or business gets a new rapid number, and that rapid number will be installed. It gets offered installed by a council officer myself, but then if they want to save on costs, they can also install it themselves as an option there. The rapid number plates have been promoted in the media. There was an article you probably hopefully saw, around, we did a bit of a promotion with Hanmer Springs Medical Centre and a couple of emergency services staff. And then we've also promoted it on social media as well, just some random promotions around rapid numbers. I've processed 28 properties that are rapid numbers corrected or added. So these are properties that have either incorrect in rapid numbers or multiple dwellings that perhaps run under one rapid number since March, and 6 of these properties have multiple dwellings. I'm currently working with 32 property owners where rapid numbers either don't exist or are not correct, and 13 of these properties have multiple dwellings and also full property owners working with at the moment a current owner right of way that we're looking at naming. We've had quite a few people in contact with us, in contact with me regarding checking rapid numbers, and this sort of seems to fluctuate around when we have media releases. So that's just ringing and checking their rapid number, and then in some cases, as you'll see further down, that's either me assisting, ordering them, or them directing them to the site. We've had 851 rapid numbers purchased in total since the rapid number campaign started. Sorry, my computer's just gone off. And 136 since March this year. And I'm currently, in the late discussions with a new rapid number plate supplier with regard to a lower price point around rapid numbers, because a lot of people with obviously the financial situation at the moment saying that their rapid numbers are a bit expensive, the ones we're promoting. So going forward, sorry. Sorry, just lost my page there. So going forward, we're still working with team leaders around rapid plate numbers and talking about what properties, council properties we can get numbered, and then no budget exists, discussing with them about looking at budgeting for that in the next budget round. I've got the research which I've spoke about in the other report I did 6 months ago in regard to looking across the council and looking at properties that maybe have multiple dwellings or the same rapid number or that are incorrectly numbered. So I have been doing a bit of this already, where I've been going across different areas, looking for multiple dwellings, cold calling farmers, popping out and having a site visit with them, because a lot of the time there's what's on the ground looks quite differently to what's on an aerial map. And then I'd like to attend all our local community meetings just to raise awareness on rapid numbers and just to make sure our local people are on the same page as us. And then we're going to be, obviously, as discussed before, rapid plate numbers for new dwellings and new businesses and myself installing them. And then and we're looking, well, had discussions with all the emergency services about doing a joint campaign with them. So that's fire, St John's and police, and they've all tentatively agreed that's a good idea. So I'm just working with a media and community team about drafting up a campaign for that. Working with them, just trying to get, I guess, bring in emergency services and have a different face driving it. Yeah. And then I'm also next week got a forum with some other local councils and emergency services about rapid numbers, what our policies are like, how we're promoting rapid numbers in the different districts, and looking at what best practices are and what works in different areas and what's not working for us.
Fabulous. Thanks, Liz. Anything else to add before I open for questions? It's a very thorough report. Thank you so much for the update. Thanks, Karen.
Yes, I think it's great, Liz, all that you're doing, and good to have an update about it. Just thinking about some signage that we had done recently in Harden for the Domain and sports clubs and blah, blah, blah. And Pete, the chair of the committee, was keen to get a rapid number as well.
Yep.
I guess the numbers, the cost of those would come out of the local community budget or something, do they?
Yeah, that would be correct, I think.
Yeah, I think his thinking was, when there's events on the Domain and so on, you might think, oh, the locals all know how to get there, but you know, he just felt that that was setting a good example as well, you know, for others, and for ease of, you know, out of town ambulances and whatever. Now that we've got ambulances coming sometimes from further afield than they might once have. So I mean, I think it's really good, and I think it would be great for council to show that leadership, even though obviously there's a little bit of cost, but I think if people see it on our buildings and on our domains and so on, I think that's a good thing too. Yeah. So thanks for all you're doing. I think it's great.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Liz. Roughly how many properties will need rapid numbers? So we know we've hit 853 so far. Do you know roughly how many more you need to do to give a comprehensive coverage in the area? Sorry.
No, if I can, well, no is the answer, but I can probably have a bit of a look. So, sorry, through the chair again, the 850 rapid numbers as well. So some of them, for example, Councillor Hislop has multiple rapid numbers across his property. So that probably doesn't take, you know, so that's not 850 properties, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I could have probably a bit of a workout to see how many properties we have done and then find out and bring that back to you.
Yeah, just not exactly.
No, just, you know, just ballpark.
Yeah.
I'll be nice.
Thank you, Dave.
Being an impatient person, as Liz knows I am. Councillor Davis, we don't need to know that. We already know which shitloads need to be done. I've suggested it before as a pilot. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there, and I'm looking around hard and we're not hitting it. And I still believe, and I'm quite happy to help with the pilot of getting all the Medbury and different areas as a catalyst of doing it, of getting it done, if that makes sense. And then not wasting more time driving, you know, in the process of doing it. And I just want to make your life easier, you know. So I suggested that as a pilot of trying getting areas, and then people work. You know, Mari sees it, I see it on Mari's gate, well, I better get it on my gate since Mari's got it. You know, and I use that analogy of the environmental awards. Yeah. When we won the environmental awards, you know, my neighbour picked up their game. You know, all of a sudden they picked up their game because, well, if Dave can do it, well, we can do it. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit there, you know. It's just don't want any more reports. You know it needs to get done.
So Dave, what you're suggesting is that community approach, and I get the sense, Liz, from what you've written in the report, that your visits to our community committees might perhaps be the springboard for that. to
The
take
community
this.
committee through the chair is not Newbury Road and it's not Harding Herring Road. It's a few representatives. I'm talking about getting all of those people on those couple of roads together in the hall with your people around them to show, well, this is need to be done. And then that's where you get the, you know, that's where you get the go forward, is someone driving up the drive. It's like a salesman trying to sell something. They don't sit in town doing it, they come and drive up my drive in the white ute and try and sell me something. Anyway, I'm only putting it out there, I've said it before 6 months ago, it was all too hard, but I don't want to have to say that 6 months, unless, but if you've got a system and you're gonna have all Newbury Road with blue paints or yellow numbers on it, all good, and then we don't have to say anything.
Thank you, yeah,
Any
good point,
comments?
good point. Yep, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, like I mean, it's all been said, this is a campaign that's been around for a long time, and Craig Ritchie has been an absolute champion to this alongside our staff as well. So, you know, the uplift probably from David Croft's newspaper article, you know, when he evidenced the issue around getting services to his gate to, you know, in times of emergency. So it's great. But my question is really, Liz, is your new supplier with the price point reduction going to give the same blue sign, or we're not going to get a different type of sign, you know, because I think that kind of loses a bit of momentum as well.
Yeah.
Just keen to understand that.
And through the chair. Yes, so I have been working with them, so I probably did a final test on it last night. To look at, you wouldn't tell the difference, like if you look at them side by side, the blue is slightly different, that's like sitting side by side, but hanging on a gate, you wouldn't be able to
So
tell.
it's still blue and looks the
Yeah,
same.
exactly the same sort of shape, same font, everything.
So who's the yellow ones that are turning up? Oh, the yellow ones turning up, or gold.
Haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, I've seen yellow ones, and I was just going to say one of
I
our
thought that
local
must have
firemen
been
have got yellow.
I thought that must have been your alternative supplier because they've gone to yellow, eh?
Okay. Liz, can I just ask, can you indicate, you know, you're looking for that lower price point, what sort of percentage lower is it? As someone who, you know, I went through and ordered, and, you know, you mentioned in here, the restriction on the postage cost, because the postage cost was almost as much as the rapid number, but, what sort of percentage
So
price
they
point?
can, so the 2 number plates, the ones up to 2 numbers, they can do it for 22 plus GST.
Oh,
And I think our current ones are 42 plus GST, and then the other price, sorry, I did actually have that up ready for that question. The other price one is, yeah, 22.95 plus GST for the smaller one, and 33.55 plus GST for the larger one, and they're currently 48 plus GST. So some considerable price drop. They have said that the courier price would still be similar, but I have been working recently, because I have noticed putting a few people off, is I created a large list of people that were interested in the contact details, and then I just did a bulk order in town, and when a council office was in town, they brought them out to here, and then this just happened recently, and people are just picking them up from the MB office.
Oh,
Because at some
fantastic.
point, everyone in the district drives past.
Yes, yeah, oh, that's great, that's really good, yeah. So yeah, it sounds like things are going really well. I was really pleased to see that the number 851 and the 136 since March. Right, are there any further questions for Liz? Keep up the good work, Liz. We'll look forward to seeing you at Southwold Committee. Can I have somebody please to receive the information? Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Tom, for seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? Abstentions? Thank you so much, Liz, for your thoroughness. Okay, and looking to our community partnerships team update. Welcome. I heard that you were stepping in there, Joe. Lovely to have you here. And your team behind you as well. Welcome. Page 23 for councillors.
And I just, I'm going to share a screen. Thank you for allowing us some time to present a bit of an update from the Community Partnership team. It's really nice to be here. And I'll just run through I'll take it that the report you received as read. And with that, we're just going to run through a bit of an update through presentation, and I'll introduce my wonderful colleagues behind me to update their respective areas. So we're going to be updating today on the welcoming communities, Together Hurunui, age-friendly youth, and an introduction to our newest member of the team, Hannah, as well. So I'll just flick through here. So just this really, we just like to put this quote in as it really underpins our approach to community-led development, local communities being able to lead as opposed to being led, and that really just reiterates for us as a team everything we do and the approach we take in our space. In terms of the community partnerships team, we align to the two main strategies points within the council strategy. So number 3, supporting communities develop and shape their own direction, and respecting the foundations of our shared history and building the future. And below you'll see there, not sure why that little one's, sorry, that one's popping up. You'll see there our vision, a connected, thriving Hurunui district, enhancing local leadership, and how we do that through partnerships, through collaborations, community ownership and development. And our why, what we get from doing that is resilient communities, inclusive communities, and empowered communities. So that's what we're about. And just to refresh what the team looks like for yourselves. So currently full-time equivalent 8.8 roles, and that's broken down amongst 12 people, individuals. From your last update in March, we've got, we're welcoming Hannah, our community engagement facilitator, on a 20-hour role here. So that's new since our last update. And the other one I wanted to just reference was our youth worker, Kim, has moved to a semi-permanent and partially externally funded role, which is enabling us some consistency and some stability in our youth space and how we plan and program our year ahead. Because previously that role's always been on a 1-year cycle, so it's always been a bit, inconsistent there. But that's what our current structure is looking like. And then this again, just referencing those outcomes that I mentioned, all our work groups within the community partnership team, all of these, all of us interweave in how we deliver and develop those resilient, inclusive and empowered communities. So that's just again a snapshot just so that you can see visually where each of those sort of work groups touch point with those outcomes. Okay. And without further ado, I'm going to then pass for updates from Natalie, who's going to update on the Welcoming Communities portfolio and Together Hurunui.
Natalie. Kia ora everyone, great to be here. So yeah, as Joey has mentioned, I am the facilitator for the Welcoming Communities program. A Welcoming Communities program and also Together Hurunui, so I'll just give you a quick update around those sorts of things. I have brought a bit of show and tell here, so if you'd like to know more, a little bit more about Welcoming Communities, we've got some information there. So 35 councils have now adopted the Welcoming Communities mahi across the country. That was MB's target, to have 35 councils rolling out the program, so they are now at capacity. My role is fully funded by MB, and that funding will finish in October of next year, so we'll need to look at that down the track. I'm currently leading and facilitating a bi-monthly regional Welcoming Communities Coordinator Hui for all of those coordinators in South Island. I sort of felt like it's really great to hear what's happening in Auckland and Wellington and Palmerston North and Queenstown, but that's quite different to what we're seeing in our more rural communities and the migrant and newcomer space. So it's been great just to pull together Ashburton, Waitaki, Timaru, other kind of areas that have a similar demographic to us, and what they're doing in the welcoming community space. Waimakariri has recently taken on the program as well, so working quite closely with them around what their welcoming communities mahi is looking like. Some of you may know or may not know, at the end of last year, Welcoming Communities hosted a stock take survey, so kind of looking, talking to our migrants, our newcomers across the district, what the experience has been like living and working in the Hiranui, what's missing, what they feel like is missing, what they want to see more of, that kind of thing. The idea behind the stock take is to get that feedback to start to put together a Welcoming Communities plan, which which we hope to have in place by the time my funding rolls out at the end of October. So we had 97 responses sort of over that sort of 3-month period. We spoke to migrants and newcomers, but we also spoke to some of their employers and also stakeholders that are working quite closely with the migrant community. The report was launched at Amiri School on the 7th of May and was hosted by the Migrant Student Club there. Amiri Area School, almost half their school population were not born in New Zealand, so they've got quite a significant migrant population at school and have a student club that does a lot of work with those students, which is wonderful. So in your little postcard there, there's the 8 welcoming communities outcomes. And so what we've done is we've looked at those 8 outcomes across all the work that council is doing sort of throughout the district. And we've profiled things that we feel like we're doing well in each outcome, and maybe some areas that we could add to our welcoming plan to work on. So I won't go through the whole report because I know you've got it in front of you, but I just did want to talk quickly about the 8 outcomes and just highlight one area we're doing well and one area that may be potentially good to add to the welcoming plan. So under inclusive leadership, we have the Māori Connection Group here at Council that enables staff to learn more about Māoridom, Māori language, that kind of thing, which is a great initiative. We could potentially look at doing some cultural competency training for staff, as part of as staff come on to council. That could be something that we could look at. Under welcoming communications, we've got the Newcomers Guide, which is a great resource for all newcomers that come to the district and want to know how do they pay their rates, where do they send their kids to school, where to do my supermarket shopping, all of those things that we can tend to take for granted that can sometimes be difficult to kind of get your head around. So we've got the Newcomers Guide, but maybe we could look at language support services in other council comms, so social media, having some kind of translation service on the council website so that those that English isn't a first language, they're able to navigate that a bit more easily. Equitable access, we have the Next Steps website, which is a wonderful wellbeing resource. And potentially we could look at hosting some ESOL English language classes, which that came up a lot in the feedback that we've got, looking for more avenues outside of online where migrants could access English language classes. Under Connected and Inclusive Communities, Citizens Advice Bureau have a great migrant support service that they offer throughout North Canterbury, so that's a wonderful thing. But we did, potentially we could look at some welcome packs, including a newcomers guide, maybe some other bits and pieces that as a newcomer moves to the area, they get a bit of a welcome pack to say, hey, we're really glad that you're here. Under Economic Development and Business and Employment, obviously MTFJ do a really great job working with our 19 to 24-year-olds, helping them sustain long-term employment. But maybe we could look at developing a diversity, equity and inclusion strategy to help and support and champion the migrant business sector. Under civic engagement and participation, celebrating our new citizens through our citizens ceremonies, which is always a really wonderful thing. Maybe we could look at targeting information sessions for newcomers on civic society matters. That seemed to be a real gap in the feedback that we got, that a lot of our migrants and newcomers are not entirely aware of civic society matters. So that could be a good thing. Number 7, welcoming public spaces. Our new libraries do a great job and catering for newcomers through social English language practice, and they have access to computers and the internet. Maybe we could include imagery or artworks in and on public spaces and facilities that reflect the cultural diversity of our district, maybe in some of those areas where we have a really strong migrant population. And finally, culture and identity. We got a lot of feedback on this outcome. We have funded a couple, I think now, of Amiri basketball tournaments for our Filipino community. But yeah, maybe we can look at developing a community-wide welcoming communities calendar of events that celebrate and showcase cultural diversity. So that's there's sort of a fuller, I guess, rollout of different other things that we might add to the welcoming plan. How it will work is I will go back to my advisory group, which has a number of different stakeholders in it, alongside some local migrants as well. And we'll kind of work through the welcoming plan. We'll look at our 8 outcomes. We'll look at potentially what we're already doing, what we could do more of, and then we'll get some more feedback around whether we're hitting the mark there or whether we want to adjust that. So so that's the welcoming plan. I did just want to quickly talk about our diversity and inclusion campaign that we hosted recently at Amiri Area School. So through the survey, got to know the Migrant Student Club, and there were a couple of students within that club who were really keen, Filipino students that were really keen to run a culture week at school, and they just did an incredible job of. Murray was at the, Murray and myself were at the culture night that they had on the Tuesday night, which was just extraordinary. But we really supported them in sort of running that and pulling that together, but we also wanted to take the opportunity to celebrate all of the wonderful diverse population that they have at Amiri. So we brought a photographer in who got some great shots of our migrant students, which included Filipino, South American, and Pacifica. And so we got some posters done up and we just plastered them all over the senior school, and then we created a big billboard as well that is a permanent billboard that will sit, which is this one on the end. It will sit alongside one of the buildings. So that was just an opportunity for us to continue to build that, to strengthen that relationship we have with the school, but also that migrant student club, and also support the wonderful cultural week that they ran at the school. So there's just been another, as in community development work, the stuff that sort of comes up all the time, you know, you hear about different things, and we're aware that there were a number of immigration changes, and particularly our Filipino community was sort of feeling a bit overwhelmed by those changes and not really feeling they were across them. And so we brought an immigration agent that is contracted to Citizens Advice Bureau. So we did an immigration workshop at Patoa Farm out in Harden, and then we also had one up at Culverden, and that was great. Dan's across everything and was able to answer their questions and give them some advice and that sort of thing. So that was, that was great. Right, well, I'll move on to.
Is there any questions around the welcoming communities before Nat goes to get it?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you very much for your presentation. Gratified to see all the feedback and response that you've had there. I just wanted to talk about something on welcoming public spaces. I think it's slide 7 or something, 7th thing. For me, our council building here is not very inclusive in its welcome. You know, like for me, when I come in, I'd really love to see a reflection of the diverse cultures and so on in our district now. And I would love to see consideration being given to inviting local runanga to get their input into how a relationship with them can be reflected in our building and in our workspace. As that relationship evolves, you know, I think it would be really nice to have a sense of that in our spaces, including the council office and maybe in our libraries. And I also think we could consider having greetings in other languages and so on in our reception areas and, you know, in our public facing spaces. and maybe, you know, artwork and so on that also reflects the diversity. So I feel like there's probably things that we could do to support what you're doing that would help people feel as if their culture and so on was recognised. And, you know, I think for me that also covers, you know, the rainbow community as well. I think it would be really nice to have a sense of everybody being welcome. And I mean, it's not deliberate. I just think it would be nice to work toward that if we could. And maybe we, as a council, as councillors, can challenge ourselves about that too for the workspaces. Yeah, those are my thoughts to support what you're doing to support the welcoming communities.
Thanks for that, Karen. Dave.
Been involved with the Filipino community for as long as it's been in January. Been named as the chief empowerment officer for them. I've been impatient, and again, as you know, and yeah, forcing all the ladies to get their licenses and forcing the ladies to do, well, encouraging. We're at a turning point where we actually need to make sure that they don't become tribal and they actually get involved in our society too, because they are falling back into becoming very tribal and breaking up amongst the Filipinos into areas, to religions, to areas and all that, which is probably no different. So it's just not, we somehow need to make sure that they are playing netball, they are playing rugby, that they're not just doing that, encouraging the Filipino basketball in town, that they are going on the school camps. So just got to, there's a balance, you know. They've got to go outside their comfort zone. So I'm hearing that from them.
Yeah.
And Angel did play in the, you know, I got hounded by some of the Colvin people that they're not playing netball. And so I was very pleased that one of our staff members was in her basketball team in the area competition, so I did feedback back. So that's the thing, they all need to have their licenses. Be hard, you know, or whoever's done this license, you know. If they need their licenses, they can't get involved.
Yeah, you're isolated.
Right?
You're isolated.
Empower them to do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about full inclusion in our communities rather than those satellite communities as well, which are important.
And those English lessons are absolutely vital, because if you want them here as full-time residents in the town, the English is what will fall them down. And you know, I have nurses in the community, and I said, what are you serving ice cream for when you're a registered nurse? What have you got to do to become a nurse here? We need nurses. I've got to pass the English test. I'm practicing with George. He doesn't speak English. I don't speak English. So, yeah.
Yeah. This is with the ESOL courses. I've just actually been speaking to Hurunui College this morning because they are seeing it at school. So they're like, we want to collaborate, we want to work with you to see if we can, you know, we've got teachers that can do it. How can we, you know, work with you in the migrant community to run maybe some night classes or however that would work. So it won't be this year, but yeah, potentially first term next year we can look at that. And I know Mary are looking at something similar. We've got a ESOL English teacher on our advisory group because she's put her hand up to help. So yeah, so I think it's achievable to be able to offer that. And
that's fantastic to hear that you're thinking of that moving forward and using the resources that we've got in the community. Is there anyone else who's got questions or feedback for Natalie in regards to us?
Just to comment upon that, Dave was at the celebration as well.
Right.
You and Nicole.
That's it. Yeah. Sandy were running and was doing it, she's been with us. And don't think of her as a migrant anymore. Please don't think of her as a migrant. She's been here 14 years and she seems to be the go-to because she's a migrant. She's not a migrant, she's a Kiwi. So, you know, so it's a.
I agree with your statement.
Yeah, she's not. She's a local now.
And they all are, I guess.
Yeah, well, we feel immensely privileged that you can be, coming forward with that funding right through to October next year to enable this is really important work to continue. Yeah, so thank you very much for that. I actually really love these 9 aspects, and you've taken us through, and I can see that, you're thinking really carefully about the things that we're doing well, but also, where there is space to continue to improve or add. So that's great. Thank you, Natalie. Right, are we going to hear from Vanessa next, Joe?
Maggie,
Oh,
sorry, Maggie.
I'm trying to cut you off short.
So we'll move on to Together Hurunui. So just quickly, Together Hurunui Hui's. We've had, this year we've had 2 mental health focused meetings, a professional development session with Kieran Fox from the Mental Health Foundation, and a hui around youth mental health, identifying Hurunui social service providers and existing gaps. We also hosted another professional development session a couple of weeks ago around the Treaty of Waitangi. The feedback from our network is they would like more opportunities for training days. They enjoy the networking, the coming together and sharing ideas and all of that kind of thing, but do love those opportunities coming together for professional development. And they've identified they want to see more training days around mental health, food insecurity, drug and family harm prevention. Together Hurunui has 3 priorities. They are poverty, mental health and drug harm. So we've got a number of projects attached to each of these priorities. Around poverty, we've got the Snacks in Schools program where we provide lunchbox top-ups to 7 Hurunui schools. Those schools are Amberley, Waipara, Waikari, Greta Valley, Hurunui College, Emiri and Chibi area school. So how that works, it's just you go down the breakfast aisle is pretty much what we provide. So it's your muesli bars, your snack food, your lunchbox top-ups. So we provide them. We were aware sort of towards the end of last year that we were providing quite highly processed food, which, is not ideal, but it does fill a hungry belly. So we approached Mainpower. Mainpower supported the Food in Schools project to see if they would give us some more funding to provide freezers so that we would provide more nutritious lunch options. And so this year we've launched the Mainpower Pantry, which is basically those ice cream freezers that you see in your dairy. So we've got one up at Cheviot School and one at Emiri and potentially Hurunui College this term. And what we've done is we've filled those freezers with food that Satisfy have been able to pass on to us, but also just kind of more nutritious kind of lunch food kind of options. Up in Cheviot, because there's no food bank, up in Cheviot we've also provided family meals. So lasagna, spag bowl, chili con carne, that kind of thing, that school can kind of, hand on to families that may need that. So both those projects are supported by Mainpower, and they have given us an indication that this will be an ongoing funding for us for this project. They, the last time I met with them, they said, we're not doing a lot in that community space in Hurunui currently, a lot happening in Waimakariri, but not a lot happening up here. And they really love this project. So that's great. In that mental health space, we've got the Next Steps website. Our Atlantic, what we can see from the site is that people are using it. We get a lot of great feedback from health centres, schools, police that are utilising it. So the site is basically a North Canterbury wellbeing directory. So that's going great. We also have the, I'm not sure if I've spoken about the Slice of Wellbeing here before, but we've, this is basically just a wellbeing resource that we've got out into North Canterbury vets, vet life, schools, police, particularly for our vets, as they're out on the farm, they're having a chat, they kind of feel like something's a bit off. They've got a resource that they can kind of pass on to our farmers. So inside we've got a whole lot of different resources, but some of the farm strong stuff, which is brilliant. So we've currently passed on around 120 packs, and we're about to do another drop. So that's going really well. And just in that drug harm space, our focus has been around vaping. Earlier in the year, Together Huronui hosted a hui with Vape Free Kids NZ and educated us around the impact of youth vaping. So we are hosting alongside our partners at Huronui Youth Program, parents night around some of that here in Amberley and also up in Cheviot. There's just another couple of projects that have sort of been bubbling away as well. We have a MSD satellite service that we have rolled out up in Cheviot and Culverden. So we knew that it was becoming more and more difficult if you say you live up in Cheviot, getting to your caseworker at MSD and Rangiora can, especially in the current financial climate, can be a bit tricky. And so we've worked with MSD, our libraries and Waita Health to provide a satellite service. So if you need to see your caseworker, you can book online and go to your local library and speak to them via the internet rather than having to travel all that way. And so that's going really well up in Cheviot and going well in Culverden as well. The last thing, we've started to host these stakeholder huis up in Cheviot and also in Amberley, and that's where we bring together police, health and education just to talk about what's kind of happening, where the gaps are, what is on top for them. And so that's been really helpful, particularly up in Cheviot. There was an issue around family harm where health were not speaking to police, so they weren't really, someone may be a victim of family harm and go to the medical centre, but the medical centre are quite clueless about what's kind of happened, and so they're not able to kind of refer on or give more information or assist the person with the help that they need. So that who has been really great at just kind of connecting different stakeholders so everybody's on the same page. And the same for True. Here at Amberley, the medical centre were aware that there were a handful of young people living in their cars down at the Domain, and so police weren't aware of that. And so that hui was great. Police were able to get down there and provide the support that those young people needed to So that's me, I think. Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
Thanks, Vanessa. Through the chair, look, just a couple of things actually. I know I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think that slice wellbeing box is brilliant. Secondly, the outcome of those kids that were in their cars, you just said that they have successfully returned home. Have you had any follow-up about, are they still?
Yeah, well, I mean, we did leave that with the medical centre because they were sort of, I guess, the lead agent on addressing that. But yeah, just collaborating with police, and then Amberley Police to actually go down there and have a chat with them, link them into MSD, ensure that they're getting all their entitlements, that kind of thing. And then I think from memory, I think we got them up with MTFJ as well. Okay. So that's been quite good with this who is just because sometimes health and education are not really aware of as a community team what we do. So, there are other avenues that we can kind of, support, particularly in that youth space.
I take my hat off to you, actually. I think you're doing a tremendous job, all of you. Lastly, I just want to ask about the treaty hui. Who presented it and who attended?
So the treaty was led by Eileen Wooland, who doesn't whakapapa to the two local iwis. She's from up north, but has lived in Cheviot and in different areas for a long time. We did work really hard to get representation from both iwis, but just due to schedules and their own separate priorities, we weren't able to kind of make it work. But yeah, I guess and because we couldn't get those iwis here, some of our network couldn't come. So, but we did have a lot of youth, Māori youth organisations, which was great to kind of connect with them because they were looking at doing more work here. We did have a big contingent from Concoal, who are based in the Waimakariri but do work in the Huronui. So it was good to, have some fresh faces in the room. But yeah, Eileen did a really great job. It wasn't just sort of, I guess, stock standard treaty training day. It was more around storytelling. It was more around the context of what was going on in New Zealand, 10 years previous to the signing, and then after, and then obviously the impact. But I found it really, I've been to a few treaty trainings, and I've never been to one like that. That was just, quite engaging.
So for the sake of historical context, I'm assuming that both treaties weren't discussed or presented?
They were, but we
Okay.
didn't spend a
Okay.
a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, particularly like with the Te Reo Hurunui Network, you've got a lot of social service that have, social services, education, government agencies that have done a lot of treaty training, so they would have, already done that, so.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. I mean, there's absolute real power in the connection of all those different agencies together, and that example that you gave of, the ministry and the police. And, I just wondered, you talked about the satellite MSD setups and the success of that. Is there any likelihood of that, I guess, encroaching further into the district or even closer to Rangiora? I'm just thinking Amberley, we have the challenges of lack of public transport, not so much the distance that we have in Cheviot and Calverton, but is that something MSD will look at? Or?
Yeah, so Tina at UBC, that's sort of our long-term plan. So we started with a pilot. So I guess the first 6 months, it was people could only access it through their GP. So it was more for our elder population that we were sort of targeting. And that went really well. And then MSD were happy to, okay, well, let's roll it out to anyone and everyone who wants to access it. So that's sort of where we're at now. So we're going to see how that goes. Just still 1 day a week up in Cheviot, 1 day a week in Calverton, see how that goes. If that goes well, then we can look at, Tina said we're happy to look at, Amble, because obviously Amble is a, a big cohort as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's great, thank you. Right, any more questions for Natalie in regards to Connect Taranai? Fabulous. Great work, thank you, Natalie. Yeah, and as I say, the power of connection.
Yes.
And when you get, all those lines and those agencies in together. Also. And I would concur with Councillor McPherson in regards to the box.
Yes,
yes. Wellness, yeah, absolutely. Vanessa, welcome. Thank you.
So it's been a wee while since you've had a bit of an update on the age-friendly space. So at the moment, the Hurunui age-friendly survey is out and about in our community. My lovely little steering group, for use of a better name, came together in August, and after some discussions with the initial data, we've actually pushed it out to the end of this month. When we looked at that data, we could see that life was peachy, and we know that's not quite the case. So we knew there's some more vulnerable people that we needed to touch base with. So by giving us that extra bit of time, and just trying to be a bit more specific with who we target, we hopefully will just see a bit more of a balanced result at the end. So on the left-hand side is the 8 age-friendly domains. If that's a little bit squished, you might be able to pick out that some of them are actually very similar to the welcoming communities, like the civic participation and the outdoor spaces. So just wanted to put them there for reference. And on the other side is just a little snapshot with the results at the moment. So the top left is the results by the return from each of the wards. So the South Ward is 85 replies, East Ward 15 and West Ward 43. And not surprising, Amberley has returned the most results at this point in time. In terms of age bracket, our 70 to 79-year-old age bracket has returned the most replies. It's probably a little bit small, but it's just over 47%. And then it's the white is our 60 to 69, and then the yellow is our 80 plus. So it's yeah, just intriguing. And we actually chose to start the survey at 60 rather than 65, just partly to be able to capture a little bit more information, but also those in that 5-year bracket will retire at some point, maybe some really soon, maybe some 5-7 years down the track. So it'd be really good to get their perspective on how they're seeing things as well. And then we just chose one question out of the 20-something just to highlight there, and it was, I feel valued as an older person in my community. So the bigger blue at the bottom is agree, so 56% of those that replied have said that, closely followed by those that totally agree, which is about nearly 27%. So it's nice to know that they do feel valued in our community, because sometimes we do sort of wonder. At the top there, the team at the Embley Library went over and above and created a wee display for me, which was really thoughtful, rather than just sort of the sign saying, here, return your surveys. So that was up for about a month. I believe it might be down now because there's some other stuff coming through. But yeah, really appreciated the support from them. It's currently sitting in paper copy version in our Cheviot, Hanmer Springs, Amuri, Harden libraries alongside Embley, and here in the main office. There's an online version as well for those that do feel comfortable. And when I did a rough count up just prior to coming in, we've had about 147 replies, and I've inputted 75 of those. So it's actually a 50-50 split on those that have returned paper versus those that have gone online, which was a wee bit of a surprise, but yeah, really nice to see that they're coming through online as well. So yeah, we've still got another couple of weeks to go, and yeah, everything's looking quite good. From the survey, that will then sort of feed into creating the Haranui age-friendly plan, and I'll also probably tap into some of Nat's intel from the 2 hui's that she has with the medical centres that she just talked about, some of her welcoming community stuff as well, because there is some synergies, and just some of the other information that we're getting through from the rest of the team as well.
Sure. When you're doing that survey, and it's great to see that those older people are feeling valued, does it delve into what are the things that make them feel that value, or because if we do, if they feel valued, we want to, do more of that.
Sure. There was some opportunity to sort of add extra comments if they wanted, but there wasn't a specific question that was asking them how or why they feel that valued. Okay.
Can I just quickly interject, actually, further to Pauline's question, the 40-odd% that didn't feel valued, was there an option for them to explain why they didn't feel valued? Because that to me is quite crucial.
Once again, it's sort of, the one thing I've noticed with this is, with the paper version, because the questions are compulsory, not forced, people are actually not necessarily answering all. So some of those that have said no have actually not indicated either side, whether yes or no they feel valued. So it's
so sorry. So there was 50-odd% that said they did feel valued, and the balance of that didn't necessarily respond.
It was no opinion.
So because of the being a paper version, they could just choose to go across.
So did you take a record of the? Did you take a record? Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
So the yellow is the no opinion, and the disagree is the 4.3% in the lighter blue, and in the older age group, seems like there's no disagreeing at this point.
So is that the white on the left says totally agree?
Totally agree.
And then you've got totally agree and then agree.
Yeah. So there was a sliding scale of how they felt. So they either totally agreed with the statement, agreed, disagreed, totally disagreed, or had no opinion.
It's positive. I didn't. Sorry. I didn't see that.
Sorry, I should have gone a bit more into detail for that.
Thank you.
Yes, it's one of the little, I guess, flaws that I've found with the survey is that in the online version, the only compulsory ones were the demographics. And of course, with the paper version, people can just choose to answer what they wish. So I do feel that there's possibly a little bit of a gap in terms of information there because of that. It's it's learning.
That's a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when I looked at my emails, we're sitting at about 149 replies. So each one that comes through now is just an added bonus in terms of data. So yeah.
Oh, sorry, Karen.
I didn't want to.
Just focused on my graphs.
Vanessa, just clarify for me, that I have a feeling that the question's related to all 8 of those domains. Is that right? Yeah, because you've given us one example of one of the questions, but in fact, it was quite a broad survey, and there was some in-depth insight being able to be gleaned from a number of the questions. Is that right?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, my lovely assistant to my right has just put up the online version. So under social participation, which is one of the domains, we've got a couple of sort of more specific questions just to dig it a little bit deeper. So we have with each of those domains, as Councillor Armstrong mentioned, there is some specific questions relating to that topic. And just chose to have a little wee explanation as to what each mean as well, because the language is a little bit Americanized because it's through the World Health Organization.
No, that's fine. Just a question around the our health centres having access to some physical copies of the survey or even the poster, because I don't know whether Glenda's talked to you. She and I went up to Cheviot last week on a different matter, but we talked about the age-friendly survey, and they had, the medical centre up there didn't have the flyer nor some paper copies. So I just wonder whether with the next 2 weeks that we've got available through to the 30th, that actually some paper copies and the poster, you may have fixed this already, but in all of our medical centres, because inevitably, the captured market are probably as much going into the medical centre as they are to the service centres. So, but you may have already done that, but if not, I think we should.
Okay. So while it's just getting fixed, just some of the distribution has been Embley Friendship Club. I visited the Embley Country Estate retirement village, so they have some copies. The manager there is also connected to the ministers, so he took along to the ministers' dinner, so he shared it that way as well. I've been to the Chew and Chat. And so pretty much those that are mentioned there have received copies as well, alongside our food banks. Connected with the Embley RSA this morning. So just trying to think outside the square and target our community contacts as well. Have tried some of the Meals on Wheels contacts as well, but they're a little unsure about it. So just still working on that. And so this slide here is just a bit of an indication of some of the groups that I've connected with over the last sort of 2 to 3 months. Went up and introduced myself to the Cheviot Men's Shed, so really lovely to see what they've achieved there, because I'm also supporting Embley Men's Shed in terms of their new site, so getting a lot of learnings from Cheviot to be able to share with the Embley group. Went along with our waste team to see Harden and Waikato Men's Shed. We were picking up something from there, so it was a good chat there. And as you can see, I mentioned the Embley Men's Shed. Monthly visit to the Embley Friendship Club is, it's an interesting group. At least 45 members out of their 80, I think it is, are there each month, and that sort of gets a bit more busier as the warm weather sort of occurs. And what I've noticed is I'm now finding that they'll come up to me after I've done my little spiel during morning tea and ask me council related questions like footpaths and potholes and that sort of stuff, and Dock Creek. So
we'll just give you some councillor cards so you can hand out.
So I've had some small wins there, which is really lovely. And I just think I've had some people say, we really appreciate you coming along and hearing what council's up to. So it really makes it worthwhile. So I'm off there next Tuesday. And for me, I grew up here in Embley, so it's also seeing a few old connections like primary school teachers and things like that. So that's been really sweet. And just at the bottom there, just membership's probably a bit of a strong word there, but I do go across as much as possible to the North Canterbury Elder Care Forum run by Presbyterian Support. It's a really lovely space just to connect with more of our North Canterbury services and just learn what's on offer there. And then also, unfortunately it's online, but it's the Age Friendly Aotearoa New Zealand network, which is for all councils, supported through the Office for Seniors. So last meeting about a fortnight ago, we were actually talking about Napier and their survey, and Karen, the facilitator, asked if I would give a wee update because she knew I was doing our survey. So gave them a little bit of a 5-minute spiel on what we were doing, and they've actually asked me to present again once it's all complete and the plan's sort of underway. So that was really lovely. And the bottom photo there is our Embley Friendship Club, who asked for their very own age concerned driver refresher course. So they had, I think they registered about 35 members, but I think about 27 came along and just had a really good day here with one of the local cops comes along as well and just talks about different policing matters. And yeah, they love the lunch. And I actually went along to one that was out at Lincoln just to get a feel for what the course was about. And yeah, it's really quite a relaxed environment. There's no tests because a lot of them get really paranoid that they're going to have to take some kind of exam or driving test, but actually it's just to come in and have a really good chat with the facilitator and just remind yourself of a few things. And I was even sitting there going, oops, I do that when I drive. Oops, forgot about that road rule. So it was a really lovely refresher. So we're actually hosting one in Cheviot, or supporting Age Friendly to host one in Cheviot shortly as well. So hopefully we'll get the numbers there, which will be really good for that community, considering they also have a community car up there with lots of volunteer drivers. So they asked, so we're trying to achieve for them. So yeah, so it's just a wee snapshot. So yeah, busy.
Excellent. Right, any questions in regards to the age friendly work that Vanessa's undertaking? I mean, I can just see your continued passion for this age friendly project, which is really cool. And you know, you mentioned that you know, the people at the Friendship Club that come up to you, you know, that's for me just a real message of that community trust that you've built with them. I think it's a really important relationship.
Yeah. I also get asked, how's your mum, how's your dad, how's your mum, how's your dad? I haven't seen them for a while, but how's your mum, how's your dad?
And that's all relationship building, isn't it?
It's
trust.
yeah, that's what you do when you're an Embley local too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much.
So I'm just going to touch on some of the youth space and give you an update there. Just giving you, this slide really is just focused on MTFJ. So Ministry of Social Development continue to fund the Mayor's Task Force for Job Programme, which is awesome. Last year we met our target of 15 outcomes, achieving 16, which has now rolled over to 17 outcomes because those young people who started a job in July are now getting to that 3-month placement, which makes it become a sustainable outcome for MSD. I wanted to, and apologies, this wasn't in a report because I came across this and thought this is actually really, I think, useful to share, and I can share the report afterwards, but the Good Measure, the Impact Lab back in 2022 did some work on MTFJ's social return on investment. And they looked at 6 councils, and Hurunui was one of the 6 councils. And just on the left, that wee lollipop sign is referring to what that investment returns for the number of factors. So for every $1 of taxpayers funding that Ministry of Social Development put into MTFJ, we get a $5.60 return. And what that means is, if you imagine a young person leaves school, if they go on to benefit for more than 3 months, they're predicted to be on benefits till their mid-20s. If they are on benefit for two years and upwards, the chances of them they are likely to remain on and off benefit for most of their lifetime. So the more we can do at this school leaver age and invest in our young people and supporting them into employment now, hopefully they'll become paying citizens within our community, strong, more resilient young people becoming adults in our community, and will cost our overall taxpayers less. So I thought it was actually quite an interesting measure, but also quite a powerful one in terms, especially when we're looking at what do we get for these types of programs.
Actually, when Madam Mayor and I were in Wellington at the local government conference a few weeks ago, and we had the privilege of going to the Mayor's Task Force breakfast, and the Minister spoke, and she spoke about those figures, and I was absolutely gobsmacked when she said that, if they're 19, 16 to 19 and on the benefit, it's an average of 19 years that they will stay in that system. So, the power of what's being done with getting them into work and seeing that investment pay off, honestly, it can't be underestimated.
And the program goes from strength to strength. We've got two since the last update, Anna and Chris, who are running the program. This year already, they've got 19 into work. Those aren't sustainable outcomes, but they're work experience, part-time jobs as well as full-time as well. So they're really putting a lot of energy into those opportunities to get the young people on that starting journey within work. We've got 32 young people currently sitting looking for work. And these are needs, so not in education, employment and training. These are probably higher needs young people. A lot of them aren't ready for work, so we've got some work to do in terms of getting them work ready and how we support them. MTFJ funding is, you'll see that we've got 176,000 committed this year for 20 outcomes, and funding has been indicated for 2026, which is really great because the program is here and it's staying. However, with that, there are it has changed in terms of what some of those outcomes look like and some of the caveats, and is getting a bit, I wouldn't say restricted, but it's changing the way we support those young people. So we are looking at, as the youth program, how can we support those straight out of school coming in so that they are joining MTFJ Work Ready. So with that, I'll just flip to the next slide, which is around our youth program. So we've introduced over the last year more skills-based activities, first aid, learner driver, babysitting courses. And not only have we seen an increase in young people engaging in the program, but we're seeing different young people engaging in our program. So we're still getting those young people who are wanting to come along, go ice skating, go to the mall, connect with each other during the holidays, but we're also seeing a real increase in young people wanting to do those skills-based activities that we're incorporating into that holiday program, which is really exciting. Learner driver, so when we did our last update with yourselves, the learner driver was happening with the school holidays. We're now delivering those in school time, and we've had 100% success rate of those doing the course, then passing their learner theory test. In partnership with Safer Roads, Emma has been able to was able to get BTNZ to come in and do testing on site, and that's now going to be AA because BTNZ are no longer offering it, but they'll come onto site. So we do the learner theory course, and then a couple of days later they come onto the school site and do the testing there and then, so we don't have the barrier of trying to get those young people to remember to sit the test. That has been a game changer.
Is that the practical test?
That's the theory, so the online theory test, but that's been, yeah, as I say, a real game changer, because what we saw with our learner theory before, they'd come and do the learner theory class, but then when we checked in, if you know who's gone and then done their test, some had, but some hadn't. So this way we can guarantee all of those young people coming to that class then sit their test.
But isn't the background, if they're getting all the theory tests, and they can't do the practical, so they're still driving on the wrong lesson.
Well, but they still, to get the foundation from the youth project perspective, if we can get at 16, they get their learners as soon as they can, then we can work with the community mentoring program and with parents, and then stepping them through to get their practical. But it's just the piece of the puzzle that with the youth program, we do the learner driver. With the defensive driving, which is once they've got the restricted, they can speed track do the defensive driving to shave off 6 months to get their full licence. That was previously funded through Safer Roads, but that funding was cut. So we, with Emma and myself and young people, the demand for that course, we've been able to shift that course over to the youth programme so that we can still offer that defensive driving for our young people. And we've got one course that's running at the moment here with 18 young people on it, and we've got 17 signed up for the Colvin one that starts next month. So that defensive driving, and it's in the report on page 25, there's just reference to it there, but that's really, you know, we can't underestimate the power that the driving support has for our young people in terms of their independence and moving forward. There's a few wee videos on there. I'm just going to test this. Apologies if the sound comes out, but these are just some of the, they're quite small up there, but they're just some of our social reels that we have on our social media that Kim captures when she runs events at schools and during the holidays. And we're using those more and more to attract awareness of what we're doing in our youth community and to parents as well. So that's been great, having a bit more visual rather than static photos on our social media pages. And then the only other one I wanted to mention under the youth programme on page 26, we had a note there that we took 20 young people skiing at the weekend. We actually didn't take 20 young people skiing because the snow had gone from Mount Lyford. So instead we went to Hanmer, we enjoyed the hot pools, we did some disc golf down in the Domain, and then we went jet boating. So that trip still happened. We had an overnighter with 20 young people and quite a few new young people to the programme, which was awesome, but unfortunately the snow was not there. So we will factor that for next year's one. And then this is just wanting to highlight there our youth takeover survey. So on page 26, there's a mention of that. This is the second year we've run that, and that's in collaboration with all the councils across Canterbury, all the youth councils. So that's been really interesting to start to compare. Now we can measure year on year what that's looking like. The trends are still pretty similar to last year around issues around mental health supports and awareness. Is still prevalent, but it's good to be able to track that. You'll see below that wee flashing arrow, the collaboration with Waimakariri and Huranui, MSD, Ministry of Education, and some businesses to run the North Canterbury Youth Futures event. So that's the Career Expo that happened this year in Main Power Stadium. That was great. Over 1,244 young people went through on the clicker, and it was really great to see some Huranui businesses there, Huranui Council represented there as well. And yeah, that's just really bringing localised, trying to raise that kind of transitional awareness for young people about what's next after school. So that's great that we can offer that within the district. And then the other one I wanted to highlight on there was the scope review at the top. So on page 26.30, we referenced the scope review. Now in 2022, the youth programme undertook a scope review, and scope Aotearoa is basically, it's a team of youth professionals that come in and look at our overall programme, what we're doing well, what we need to improve on, and there's 19 standards that they look at, varying from have we got financial structures in place, have we got safe policies and procedures, are we engaging and being an inclusive programme for our young people. So back in 2022, 10 of those 19 outcomes were met, and with that we were given an action plan and met monthly with John Harrington, who in the youth world has been the guru. So we met with him regularly to look at, well, how can we improve ourselves. And then we went through our re-review this year, and we're now 18 of the 19 standards we've now met, and 3 of those best practice, which is our financial structure, our processes for staff and volunteers, and our resourcing. So that's really exciting that we've got a benchmark for our programme. We can really just keep stepping it into being a really strong and safe space for our young people to engage with us. And then Natalie mentioned the parent session that we're running in conjunction with our schools. And this is around vaping, but also online safety. So we're seeing a real increase in young people accessing illicit material, things online, and not necessarily, we're just trying to raise awareness amongst parents of what that space looks like, because it's quite different to when as parents were young. So it's we're just wanting to work more with our wider whānau to support our young people. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Can I just ask, fantastic to see that you meet 18 of the 19 standards and that 3 of them were best practice. Can I ask what is the one that
Yeah,
that's
it's around our relationship with England. And how we, and we partially met, like we do, you know, youth work is modelled around kind of looking at the whole young person, but we've still got some work to do in how we connect more and support our young people to connect more.
Sure. Thanks, Councillor McPherson.
Jo, just want to ask you a question about the survey.
Yeah.
The questions, the issues that are raised, are they asked or they posed as questions?
There's a tick box. So there's a list of what is your top priorities, your top 4, and there's a list, and then there's an other box for comments.
So I'm in the 6% that have answered the upholding Te Tiriti. Are these young people being presented with both versions of the treaty? It concerns me that they may not be, from at least an educational perspective.
Yeah. So the question in the survey is just in general, do they feel, and this was particularly pertinent this year because there was a lot of rhetoric in publicly. So it was about saying, what do you think, you know, from a youth perspective, what's our landscape, is this an issue for you?
So
the question was literally just, do you think, is it important to you that we uphold Te Tiriti?
Sort of the way it's worded, I mean, I actually obviously feel quite strongly about it, that these young people need to be presented with facts.
Yeah.
And this is the difference, and this is why there's a difference, so that they can actually be informed and make up their own mind about how it's got to where we've got to. So when it's worded as Te Tiriti, it gives me the impression that they're not being presented with both versions.
Yeah.
And I would like to give that feedback, and I hope that we could actually follow through on that. So I think that's actually really important.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Thank you.
From an educational perspective, there within the New Zealand Histories curriculum, there is expectation that both versions are presented.
So that needs to be worded then in that case differently.
I think we sort of have to remember that we're in a governance role, we shouldn't necessarily be telling our officers what to do.
I'm not, I respect that, but I as a governor, I have to give that because I think it's important.
Well, busy time in the youth space as always, which is great. Fantastic. Look, thank you so much.
Can I just make a comment? Sorry, it's just in relation to the campaign exchange, the Chinese students, you know, and I'm just concerned, what I would like, my suggestion might be that I think it needs to be documented that it's because of the sister district relationship and the strategic pillar of education that we were participating in the Champagne exchange for the Hiranui students. I just think it just doesn't give enough context of why that happened in the report, and I think that's really, really important under the context of the sister district relationship. So just a comment.
Yep. Thank you, Mary. Awesome. Fabulous.
And I just would like to now finish with just welcoming and introducing Hannah, or Hannah's going to introduce herself.
Hi, so I'm Hannah Thompson, and I'm very new to council. I've only been in my role for 5 weeks now. I'm the community engagement facilitator. So I live locally, just up in Waipara, and have lived in the district for 20 years. My background is in advertising and marketing, and then more recently owning a business here in Amberley. So I've been involved with the community and the local business community. This slide up here explains my role a little bit more in depth and what the process is, but basically I'm here to work with council to connect with the community on their projects. So together with my team and the communications team, we collaborate and come up with a communications and engagement plan for your project, and then I go on to facilitate that engagement. I'm learning heaps so much every single day that I'm here, and I've loved meeting all the lovely people around the office, and just really excited to get out into the community and do the job.
Oh, welcome, Hannah. We know that you've got I know that you've got an immense amount of skill in regards to engagement, and so we'll look forward to putting it to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, glad to hear that you're enjoying the team
I am,
environment as
yeah,
well.
very much so. Thank
Yeah,
you.
any questions or anything from Hannah about her role? No.
So just finishing with that slide, Te Waka Eke Noa, we're all in it together, and that really does, as I say, just summarise what we're all about. So thank you for your time, and letting us present an update for the last 6 months.
And thank you very much, Jo, and your team for such a thorough update, because you know, I won't apologise to councillors for the late morning tea, because actually the power of the work that the community and partnerships team does, it cannot go unseen. It is, you know, that kind of. So thank you all for answering our questions and for filling us in on exactly what's been happening over the last 6 months. Judith, did you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, with that, do I have somebody who is willing to receive the information? Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour, please say aye. Extensions work. Okay, so it is my intention to break for morning tea, and as I say, I want to apologise for the late morning tea. And then when we come back, we will have our update from our water and land coordinator. Right, so perhaps if we are back in the room at, let's say, 11:30. Right, welcome, Rena. Lovely to have you here for your update, and we'll just hand straight over to you.
Oh, excellent. First slide, please.
I'll move in this direction this time.
So we'll start with what's going on at Birdsong here. So it's not completely clear, but the planting stretches right from the left of the screen to the right there in the sunny spot. That was just one day's planting with a small keen crew. We've got our gun planting crew now, so we can get a lot of plants planted really well and quickly. We're putting in 2,000 plants again this year, so that's about 250 plants we put in that day. And another 250 went on Saturday, and I'll put my blanket up. It's another story. So that's going really well. The next slide, please. We've got this year. You can see on the left that's before we started doing anything. On the right there, you can see the 2 tracks that are in, and down the bottom of the bottom track there's a bridge. So we've got a walking track at the beginning of a loop track on the other side of the stream there, and then that whole sort of smooth area has been planted out as well, and on this side here. So we're getting quite a large part of the area planted out these last 2 years, which is going incredibly well. Next slide. And we're putting in
park benches and picnic tables, so the community are being made locally by members of the community. The Birdsong Trust have employed Jo Lowe for 4 hours a week as the sort of coordinator facilitator. She was putting in an awful lot of work already, and just needed to acknowledge that by paying her properly. So she's organising all of this side of things now, which actually is great because it means I can step back quite a lot. The community are taking the project over and taking good ownership over it. Next slide. The Greater Valley School are getting really involved, so they've had 2 field trips to the plantings, just to sort of, the first one was learning about what we're doing. And it's pretty cool, the kids sort of recognise that if we want the birds, the native birds, that sort of belong in this area to come back, we need to provide food plots for them. So, yeah, and that came from the kids themselves, just saying, I said, what do you think we're doing here? And they said, we're planting plants so that the birds can come back. And so as part of that too, the year 1, 2 and 3 class, it's one class, they asked me to come and talk about the predators that eat the birds. So the Ashley Rakahuri River Care Group have got a box of taxidermied predators, stoat, weasel, hedgehog, cat, the works. So I brought them along and showed them, and of course they were very excited about all of that. I'm not sure how much of it got through, except that these are very, very cuddly animals, but yeah, they some of them, quite a lot of them are already doing predator trapping at home, so they really could relate to what I was talking about, which is good to see, that the kids in the community are sort of starting to recognise the value of the natural environment from our district, because it's unique, it's special, and they're starting to get it, which is really lovely. So the next slide, that's Birdsong going well. This is the Grierson's Road planting site at Amberley Beach. This has to be planted out in natives. It was a pine forest, it got cleared, it needs to have trees put back on to keep the council's carbon balance right. So as you can see, a lot of the native trees are struggling, but the big ones are Nio, and so I recommended to Kevin Roach, who's running the Northern Pegasus Bay Coast Care Group. He asked what to plant there, and I suggested we just put a whole lot more Nios in, and they'll provide protection for other plants, as well as clearly being the plant that belongs in that environment and grows really well as a native. So there's quite a lot of weeds in that area, so we probably have a day with the weed busters getting some of the tree lupin away, and yeah, get that site progressing. It was in the hands of a community group originally, but that community group kind of dissolved. Everybody, the people in it got old or left or got sick, or just it hasn't had the input from the community that was originally the idea around this native planting. So the Northern Pegasus Bay Coast Care Group, they're going to do this. They've been planting on the Kauai River, the track that Kevin Roach has put in from the Kauai River to Leesfield Beach. That track there's planting going on there again this year. And the Northern Pegasus Bay Coast Care Group are looking to find funding to get an ecological report of that whole coastal area that they're wanting to look after, so that they actually get a report on what the priorities are, what's there, what needs enhancement, what can be left alone. Yeah, basically how to look after the coast as well as can be. So, and the Coast Care Group will also get some funding for traps and trapping. So getting your predators under control, which is an important first step.
Reba, is this north or south of the culvert? That this planting is happening?
South. Yeah. The next slide there, Ava. So weed busters, I don't know if you recall from my last presentation, getting a Weed Busters group up and running was one of my big projects for this year. And it's been a great success. This was our first outing. So those weeds that you see on the right there, that's tree lupin. They're just 1 year old. This, where we're sitting, that's the group that came. That's a bird nesting island on the Waio River. So the black-fronted tern, a rare bird, nests on this island. They don't nest if there is vegetation on the area. They'll go and find somewhere else. And they're being encouraged to nest on this island because ECAN are keeping it as an island to protect them from predators. But ECAN haven't got the funding that they've had in the past, so it wasn't going to get weeded. So the Weed Busters stepped up and did that, which everybody's really pleased about. What ECAN will do is make sure that the channel between the island and the mainland is deep enough, but that's all they've got funding for this year, so they don't have money for predator trapping, it's more weeding. Next slide, please.
Marina, can I just ask, when you're dealing with the tree lupin, does that material need to be removed?
No.
Or can it just be pulled out?
Yeah. So this is the black-fronted tern. There's only between 5 and 10,000 anywhere in the world. They only nest on the braided riverbeds, and the nesting sites are being compromised by weeds and predators all over the country. So at the moment, just keeping small areas safe for them to breed is as much as we can do to make sure they don't go extinct, because they are in danger of going extinct. And they belong here. You know, the Hurunui district has got our two big braided rivers, the Waio and the Hurunui, and they're really important nesting sites for these birds and other birds as well. But this particular island is special for the terns that's within this. So the Weed Busters, next slide. So we're also tackling Old Man's Beard. This is in the background of the group on the right there, you can see that's a piece of natural bush that's been smothered by Old Man's Beard. So the landowners have been doing a huge amount of work to clear the Old Man's Beard off it. They got some funding for fencing so they can let sheep in at strategic times of the year, which the sheep love Old Man's Beard sprouts. So they'll get rid of any of the new plants, and then if they get cut off at ground level, we do paste the stems with herbicide, but if any more sprout, then the sheep will eat those. So yeah, we're just helping these landowners tackle this absolutely enormous problem that they've got. But that little patch of bush will get cleared in the end. And there's some plants in there that are quite unique to this area, and it's so much ecologically, it's so much more important to protect what you have rather than starting planting from new. This patch of bush shows up on aerial photos from the 1950s. It's been there a long time, and you know, losing it would be a real shame, and the Old Man's Beard would eventually kill the bush underneath. So just helping rescue one little spot. And one of the other projects we're doing is tackling pig's ear. So pig's ear is the succulent. It's a really popular garden plant around here because it grows anywhere, but that's also what makes it a fantastic weed. It grows anywhere and it spreads really well. So this is below the Mount Brown QE2 covenant, and the Mount Brown covenants, that gentian flower on your right, it only grows in the Waipara area, nowhere else in the world. Its environment is really threatened, and yeah, to prevent it from going extinct, this covenant is being looked after by actually DOC are putting a lot of energy into it, because their threatened plant people are very interested in making sure that this and the Waipara sunheavy, which also grows in that covenant, had somewhere safe to live, a bit like the birds. And so the pig's ear is wind dispersed, so the seeds are blowing into the covenant, and this is a property below the covenant. So what I figured we should do is actually get rid of the source of the weeds, so that when DOC weed in the covenant, the source, they're not getting a new crop of seeds coming in. So we probably need 4 or 5 days of this kind of work to clear as much of the site as we can actually reach, because there's some on the cliffs. But the next slide, please, Abel. So you can just see in that slide the sort of greyish plants there. So we cleared in the below is what we at the end of the day, and then up above is the cliff faces where the rare native plants are growing. So you can see they're completely vulnerable to seeds coming up from the ground. So yep, taking on some of the big problems of the district. I'm also working with ECAN. Next slide, please. I mentioned in my last presentation, I mentioned great willow herb. This weed was first found in North Canterbury, first site in New Zealand. It's potentially a huge problem for wetlands. It seeds prolifically, it grows to 2 meters high. But also because it's in wetlands, it's really hard to control because the ground's wet. You can't just walk around and go and spray it. You don't want to spray in a wetland because it's around water. So where it has taken off, it's a massive headache, and ECAN is trying to put a lid on it, make sure it doesn't spread outside of Canterbury. So at the moment, the sites within Christchurch and the sites in North Canterbury, and the furthest north one is at the Pauaho River in Culverden. There's a site there. So ECAN have got a staff member scouting the district, looking for it, so they know exactly where it is, eliminating it where possible, and then putting a containment sort of boundary around any sites that they do find that they can't eliminate because it's got out of hand. If this gets out into the wider district, it's one of those plants that's just going to cost millions and millions of dollars to control in really sensitive environments if it gets out. So ECAN feel it's their responsibility to ensure it doesn't go beyond Canterbury if they can manage that at all. It gets transported from site to site, mostly in the wheels of machinery. So it was found in a quarry. Of course, quarry machinery is going all over the place, and it's been found here, there, and everywhere where the trucks have been. So yeah, just getting to know it. At the moment, all I can do is keep an eye out for it when I'm out in the district, because when it's flowering, it's quite obvious. It's in a drain on Hursley Terrace Road. There's a drain with it in there, and yeah, it's just in odd little places around the district. So the busters have offered ECAN that if we can do anything on that front, we will. So that's keeping them, keeping that in mind.
So if it's in a wetland at the moment and it's bad, will they pragmatically go and spray that?
I don't know how they're planning on controlling it. Actually, I think if you're not allowed to spray where there's standing water, so I'm not sure what their control method's going to be. Yeah, but each plant, once it's seeded, it's just massive wind-blown seeds going everywhere. Yeah. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye out for. Leafield School, as many of you will be aware, they have this big ramp put in. So on either side of that ramp, you can see native plantings. That was actually native plantings that the community put in some years ago, and it was really successful and it was lovely, but they had to get rid of a whole lot of it to put the ramp in, which, I spoke with the principal, Robert Cannon, and he said it was quite a heartbreak for a lot of people to see all their hard work just getting to be destroyed. So he asked me to give advice on, what natives to put back. In between, the sort of triangular garden spaces in between the ramp. So I recommended that they ask the landscape designers who are going to do this to put in the dryland ecosystems that really belong in this district. Our dryland shrubs are really unique to our district, and there's a whole range of species that people don't know them well, because for the dryland shrublands are all on private land, and a lot of them have been grazed. So that means that there's quite a few plants that are missing from the from the areas that are growing on people's farms. It can cope with a bit of grazing, but yeah, often the clematis, you know, we've got 2 species of flowering clematis that belong in those ecosystems, but they're really palatable to sheep. So what I suggested is that they actually plant those areas, because when they're in good order, these shrublands are really beautiful and they've got scented flowers in them, and they're really interesting texturally as well. So yeah, they've asked, I had meetings with the 2 landscape designers that they're contracting to do the work, and so we sort of explained that thinking as well, and we'll sort of we'll merge the bushy stuff from the left into, you know, more scattered trees and then into the drylands. So yeah, it just helped out with deciding that, because the principal, he had to present something to landscape designers to, you know, give them ideas that were really relevant to this district. So we came up with a good plan for that. So I'm trying to, a lot of my work is with community groups around the place, and this is the track along the Kauai River down by Wilcox Road, and as you can see, it's a bit of a mess. And I would love to find a way to get this into a really attractive, well-functioning ecosystem with a track through it. So, and it sort of links in with what the community engagement team were talking about earlier, you know, having access to walking spaces outside, access to nature is so important for people's well-being. And, you know, I just think we need to provide a range of walks for people in the Amberley district, and sort of for Amberley residents, walking, you know, out their front door and going for a lovely walk in nature. So
the one on the left, is that the one at the domain?
That's what, sorry?
That track on the left, is that the one that is part of the domain?
Yes, it is.
Are you in communications with the Amberley with the advisory group, the reserve advisory group?
No.
Okay, it's probably a good idea maybe that
yes, definitely.
And
thanks for the reminder.
Put your brains together, because I totally agree with you.
So I think that ECAN have been doing work on this on the riverbanks, and I've asked to meet with them and talk about what they're planning. They've done some planting further down on the right-hand track, but when I last looked at it, it was needing some attention. And, you know, so finding out from ECAN, are they resourced to look after these native plantings, or would they like to find some locals who are interested in, because it's, you know, that we were talking about the retired people in Amberley as well, and, you know, being involved socially and feeling like you're contributing to your civic duty is so much a part of, you know, being part of the community, and not everybody is in the Lions or plays golf or something, so it's great to provide a range of activities.
That track is an asset, it's such an asset, and it's underutilised, it doesn't get beautified.
Yeah,
so if you perhaps can do that, and then something will come of that, and then we'll come back to the South Ward, and maybe we can make something pretty cool.
Yeah. So I'm just at the stage of looking at it, figuring out, like, there's Transrail have got land there, and I've got land, and ECAN have got some land, and then there's some private land that goes right up to the river. So, you know, it's just going to be an interesting one to see how to make it work. But definitely the track along the domain can get some beautification happening, and then it'll be really nice on the other side of the road that can go as well. And also on the subject of community groups, over April I had a display in the library of displaying all of the community groups in the district who are working for the environment. So just to let people know what's going on, but also contacts for people who want to volunteer. So just enabling any of that, you know, people are keen to help but don't know where to, or, you know, that there's a range of stuff now. People can plant, or they can weed, or they can help with a track or something like that. So
So those sorts of displays would probably be quite good to you know, redo those like annually, if there's a space in the library, just for newcomers who, you know.
That's right, and
we
it's
wanted
going
to
around
give
the
them-
other libraries at the
Yeah,
moment, so it's
right.
going around all of the libraries.
Sorry, Rin, are you able to email me through that list? Sure. Because that would be a good thing to share itself with, possibly. Thank you.
Next slide. So the recently purchased wetland, this is a photo of it at its fullest, really, you know, so we had a really wet winter last winter, and the wetland filled up. We had I organised a field trip there recently and there wasn't much water in it, so it's a wetland that comes and goes. It's a peat wetland, which is kind of interesting. So there's a group of locals who've, when I first got the job here, they came to me and asked what was happening with this wetland, and it was in private ownership and the council has been, you know, had an interest in it for a long time. And I, you know, on Judith's guidance, I just kept saying, hold off, you know, this, you know, we just need to put a pause on this. So while that was paused, they went off and did a whole lot of research. So this bunch of very keen, knowledgeable local people are wanting to have some input into helping look after the wetland, and how that input looks is completely sort of open to sort of negotiation. But there are various models around the country of community groups that have got are working on publicly owned land to do the restoration and the care of the land. The Travis Wetland Trust have done it for 30 something years at Travis Wetlands. So, you know, the council owns the land, but the Wetland Trust actually runs the restoration side of it. And yeah, so in a smaller way, we've got the Birdsong project happening on public land, guided by a community. And you know, the community group are really cognizant of the fact that this the council have got what they need as an outcome of owning this land in terms of preventing flooding. And so yeah, it's hydrologically it's really complicated. Ecologically it's interesting and not straightforward, and then from the council point of view it's quite complicated as well. So there's quite a lot to work through. But can I have the next slide please, Abel? This is Travis Wetland on the left. When the council first bought it, it was a similar thing. It was just a wet farm with a bit of scruffy, you know, weedy stuff in the middle that indicated the wetland plants. And that's what it looks like, you know, 30 years later. So we've got a job on our hands. It's a long-term thing, but every time I go to Travis, there's walking groups, there's people from retirement villages coming, you know, for picnics and field trips. There's schools there. And of course, there's loads and loads of birds. And yeah, I've got friends who moved there recently because they wanted to live near a wetland. And also, you know, again, for all the expansion of Amberley that's happening, the more outdoor natural environment we can provide for the residents, it just makes Amberley so much more attractive. Yeah.
Maggie.
Sorry, I should go through the chair.
Looking at that concept, you know, how do you envisage like I've got a vision of that, of a proposed walkway / cycleway, not through it obviously, but round it or something like that. I mean, obviously the two can work.
Yeah, oh, definitely. So Travis has a track all the way around.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it actually does go all the way around.
Oh, okay.
And then they've actually put predator-proof fences in a couple of places, you know, so that, because the water is a prevention for animals, and so but it's not the same kind of wetland, but having a loop track all the way around is kind of the obvious thing, really. And then that also, with the planting, if you plant around the track, so what they've done in some of the areas that Travis have left open, because there's a whole suite of birds that need open ground that gets wet and dry and wet and dry. But you don't want people walking right past that because it frightens the birds, so they've got screening for the track and then just sort of window spaces where you can look and see, and then you're screened again, and that doesn't seem to bother the birds.
In Tauranga, where I hail from, we've got the estuary, the Inner Harbour estuary, and we've actually done right around the whole, through it and around the perimeter of it, we've done a raised platform walkway and cycleway.
Yeah.
So it actually lets other things go on and nature sort of does its thing while it's quite a good concept actually.
So hopefully it'll become a place for the birds as well as much as people. So the middle of the top of those birds, that's the bittern. They're quite rare now, and that would definitely be a bird that would come back. Bottom left is a marsh crake. So I mean, they're so unusual. I've only ever seen one. I've heard another one, but seen another one, but they're very unusual. But they've returned all by themselves back to Travis Wetland, and so once we've got an extensive wetland, we're probably going to get some pretty interesting and rare birds that aren't found anywhere else in our district. So that's kind of exciting. And I think that's everything covered. Yes. Let's see.
Wow, you've been very busy. I'm not surprised, Jenny, and as I've said a few times today, actually, your passion for biodiversity certainly comes through when you speak about all the projects that you're part of. It seems like we've still got a bit of work to do with busting weeds. Yeah,
that's not going to stress.
It's a never-ending task, isn't it? Any questions? Thanks, Councillor Davies.
With the drought that we've got, how is the planting going at Birdsong? Are you able to get enough water or get the plants watered enough after planting all those? I know when we went there before, we saw there was water around, you could go on, people walking could go and water the plants. Is that working all right?
So there's been, over the summertime, there's been, the fire brigade came a few times with their tankers and watered for us, which was, it's great because whoosh, we could water most of the plantings in 2 hours, but when they couldn't do it, my husband John and I turned up there and it's 6 hours with 2 hoses to water all the plants. But we've had good survival. There are a couple of patches that didn't get watered and we have lost plants, but originally those plants weren't in that good order to start with because they were given to us as root bound plants. So the plants that are going in this year are in bigger pots, and if they've got that amount of roots to start with, then they've just got a far better chance of handling difficult conditions as they come on. But if we need to water, we will, until the plants get established, because we're just emulating a good year. The previous 3 years were great years for growing stuff, and now we're in a patch where it's not. So we just have to do what we need to. But yes, we're watering, looking after them, and getting good survival rates.
Good on you.
Well done. Hey, any other questions or comments? Oh, look, thanks, Rima. And we hope for some rain to help you with that lessening the watering load. Yeah. 2 days of rain. Yeah, especially just after you've done that planting. Yeah. And I hope that gets better. Thank you. If I could have someone to receive the information. Thank you, Murray. Thank you, Vanessa. All those in favour, please say aye. And next up, page 76, upcoming bylaw reviews. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi.
I don't know if we've had you here before.
Don't even know.
Oh, would you like us, let's do a quick wee whip around and do a bit of
Well,
a...
perhaps I should do an introduction.
Yeah,
first.
thanks, Trina.
So, Steph was here 4 and a bit years ago, and for a period of maybe about 10 years before, 5 years before that, and worked on the district plan review. And yeah, 4 and a bit years ago was blessed with a son, and so just in recent times she's been working from home, doing some sorting out some HR records for us, and that project ended. So she's now working back in the planning team just a few hours a week on some of these policy projects. So she's an oldie but a goodie. So that's why, you know, Mari will know her, but she's very familiar too.
Oh, welcome back.
Yeah, so it is a welcome back.
Great to have you here. So just for your benefit, we might just do a quick whip around so that you can maybe put names to faces.
Hi, Steph, I'm Karen Armstrong, Westport, and I'm in Waikato.
Stephanie or Steve? Steve's good. Steve. Hey Steve, I'm Vanessa McPherson, I'm Southport councillor.
Welcome back, Steve. Great to see you.
Hi, Steph, Westwood and the Springs, Tom Davies.
Steve, Dave Hislop, Westwood, Medbury.
Do you know April?
Only on email.
And I'm calling my Southport councillor based in Broomfield. Welcome.
Thank you.
I don't have a nice information.
It's okay, we've got a good report in front of us with a good appendice.
So this is an information report. Just to note, it is final. I forgot to take the draft watermark off here. That's in there. So myself and my colleague Aidan and Crystal are working on some bylaws at the moment. Aidan is progressing the cemeteries bylaw and livestock movement bylaw, and I'm doing the public places bylaw. Public places, that is things like food trucks, fencing on the side of the road, that kind of thing comes under public places and ensuring it's not a nuisance. So they're required to be reviewed every 10 years under the Local Government Act, so they're due for their 10-year review. On page 76 and 77, I've just kind of set out some very generalised steps of the bylaw process. So information gathering, what has worked, what hasn't worked in the last 10 years, have we had feedback from customers on it, that kind of information. Talking with the operational teams who deal with those bylaws. So these ones in particular talking to compliance teams and roading teams mainly, and the property teams as well, just to see how they're functioning. We then, depending on the complexity and the scope, basically research all the issues, look at current best practice, see how other councils look after these kind of bylaws, whether things have changed over that 10 years, because 10 years is very long but very short. I mean, things can change over that time. New issues can come up that we need thinking of when we last did the bylaws. So we get legal assessment as well, draft them up. Depending on the complexity, we come back and talk to committee as needed. I'll talk to a bit more about that in a minute. And then we figure out an appropriate consultation phase and submission phase, and then consider submissions and finalise the review. So in terms of these, just where they're at, so with Aidan's ones, he's talked to the relevant operational teams. There's some minor changes for his one that he's putting in there, recommending. He's aiming to come back to the October meetings. There's an extraordinary meeting of this committee in October now that he's hoping to present there and seek approval for consultation. My ones, I'm still talking to the relevant operational teams and just scoping up the size of it and depth of the issues. I'll be seeking some legal input initially, just some questions here to steer on particular things. And then I'm aiming to come back to the November meeting. I put issues and options paper, but it might be more a workshop format. We'll just have to figure that out close to the time. But just to basically seek some input on kind of get a flavour for what kind of councillors are thinking and kind of the direction of it. And yeah, that is pretty much. So yeah, you'll be hearing about these in the next few months. You have any questions, please?
Any questions from councillors? Oh, thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
I sort of guessed the answer to this, but I might be wrong. So if they go beyond their 10 years, sort of excellently, because we're still in a work in progress or whatever, that the current one's just still carry on, they don't expire in 10 years or anything?
Yes, so under the Local Government Act, so if you have a new bylaw, you have to do after 5 years, thereafter it's 10-year reviews. If you don't do one of those 5 or 10-year reviews within a 2-year time frame,
right, they
technically are revoked automatically.
Okay, so it's plus or minus 2 years,
Yeah.
and then
they're
done.
Well, Judith's going to speak about the work program after, but I mean, we aim to do it in that time, but I'm sure, yeah, we are substantially progressing these ones.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Steve, just interested in the previous versions of the public places bylaw, which included hawkers, mobile and travelling shops and da-da-da-da-da. What other da-da-da-da-das are there that actually implicate the strategic objective number 3, our strategy, our council strategy? Are there any other aspects in mind with that, apart from those other previous versions? That's a bit jumbled, sorry, does that make sense?
So those previous versions are then what feed into the one public places and effect, and it became, I guess, kind of like an umbrella bylaw. Are you meaning more in terms of impact on the community? Is that?
Well, you mentioned here on page 77 at the bottom there that the review of the public places bylaw aligns with our strategic objective number 3, which encourages communities to consider how they can enhance the tourist visitor experience. So I'm just wanting to know, I mean, I can go and have a look at the bylaw myself, but off the top of your head, what other components of that actually affect?
So something there, and we'll discuss this more when I present in November, but one of the things in the public places is, so we have sections on hawkers, mobile travelling shops and all those kind of things, and certain limits on where they can go. Since this bylaw was done in 2014, something that's become more prevalent is food trucks and just all that kind of thing. So, and that's a thing we'll probably need to get into more discussion of, just whether we want to be more embracing of that, and kind of that leads into the whole tourist experience and all that kind of issue. Because at the moment it's quite limiting where people can go. So just where it basically kind of limits it in town centres and within a 400-metre range on the kind of in the main centres.
Really?
And they're basically from the 2014 review, it pretty much rolled over from the 2008 one. So it hasn't kind of been reviewed in detail since then. And I can't actually find where that 400-metre rule came from either. So yeah, so there's the whole, do we want to encourage it, or do we want to maybe have a certain space where it's, I was talking to the property team and they said, why don't we have a once a month come out to Amberley on Friday night, have your food truck, all this kind, all these kind of things would feed into that discussion about.
Okay, because there's other implications with that too, like if we've limited those food trucks to the sort of CBD as such, then we also have to consider the impact that it actually has on our current bespoke.
So there's that aspect as well.
So I'll be looking forward to that conversation.
Yes, there's a whole, cool. Get into quite complex discussion about it when you discuss it, but that will be coming up.
Thank you.
Good question. Anybody else? Okay, I think that's an indication of the thoroughness and clarity of the report. Thanks, Steph. Okay, so I'll just move in the chair that we received that information, and someone to second. Thank you, Tom. All those in favour, say aye. Okay, abstentions. And item 4.5, page 80, which is the updated work program, Judith.
Okay, so I don't actually know, Hamish, the council strategy in designing an action plan is that still on the plan? Is that? I should caught up with you to check where we're at with that.
No, we did an action plan for the council strategy.
Has that been completed? Council is aware of any outstanding work on the council strategy?
The strategy, I think the strategies, I think the action plan might be still a work in progress, isn't it?
The action plan for the action plan.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can check.
Yes, so,
Just
yeah,
check that
sorry,
out.
had some formatting issues here, formatting's not my strong point, but the reserve management plan, you're all aware, we're now, making all the changes, after the deliberations, that's gonna take us probably a couple of months by the time we update all the photos, update the maps, and actually check that we've got the wording correct, so taking our time, on that, because you only get, you know, we can make changes along the way, but it won't get reviewed again for another 10 years. So that's just working its way through.
So through the chair, unlikely to get back to October meeting, is that what you're saying?
Unlikely,
Yeah.
yeah. It's still in a Word document. It hasn't even,
Right.
the program, the technical program was quite tricky. So we're making sure the words are all correct before they get shifted into the design program.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I guess I've got a question mark on my mind about whether we should send the changes back to the community committees to get them to check again that the wording changes have been made and are correct. So that will slow things down, but it may be worth doing that. Not sure, haven't decided on that step yet. So just a bit of work in progress. Development engineering standard, so that is ongoing. Hayden can work on that, but he's not working on resource consents for us. Climate change sustainability strategy. So we do have a draft strategy that Hamish and I have reviewed. And I guess, Hamish, that probably is just about ready to come back to council. So that one will come back to you. The work's been complete. South Ward spatial plan, look, I was away for a couple of months, so nothing much happening on that at the moment. Forestry policy, I need to talk to my colleague and see if we can get some progress on that one. Walking and cycling strategy, I think it's walking and riding strategy. So Andrew will talk to you about where we're at. Some progress had been made, but then it had stopped, and so Andrew's picked it up. He's got a working group that he's working with, so he'll provide you with an update after lunch. We need to make some changes to the transport chapter because it conflicts with the development engineering standards. So in a way, those two projects are a little bit hand in hand. And really it's just finding within the team someone that has the capability to progress that plan change. Similar to the miscellaneous, building up a list, looks like that's been allocated to Barry. But with Nicola away, he's flat tack on resource consents. The review of the child protection policy is something that Maria will work on. That's somewhat urgent that we get that one done. And then we've got a bunch of new things. So the compliance monitoring and enforcement policy that hasn't been considered by the council for a very long time, over 10 years, so I'll bring that one back. The management and funding of council property policy, I think that arose maybe through LTP discussions. I made a note of that one. It's a wee bit out of order. So then we've got our 3 bylaws, which Steph just talked about. So they've all been signed and work is well underway. Pegasus Bay bylaw, that's not due for review until next year. And then this is just a record of things that are coming. So keeping amenable settlements bylaw, that's not till 27. Freedom campaign, it's not there.
Can you remember the Northern Pegasus Bay bylaw, what does that cover?
That's the coast. So that is from our boundary to the rocks. Yeah.
So that's not the vehicle, controlling vehicle movement?
Yes.
It is. Okay, yeah, thank you.
And that one will, we'll need to have a bit of a philosophical discussion around that bylaw and actually whether a bylaw is appropriate, can't remember what the words are, but appropriate way of managing the issues. And a bit of a review of whether it's achieved what we wanted to achieve. So that's quite a piece of work. And I think as Waimakariri have found out, it's quite difficult managing the competing demands and expectations of the community about access to the coast. So that one will take some time.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a question, Judith, about the freedom camping bylaw?
No, you can't.
I'm going to. I just see that, you know, we were going to do a comprehensive review in 2023, which hasn't happened. Just in regards to the question that Councillor McPherson asked with bylaws that have to be reviewed every 10 years, and then if it goes 2 years past, then they're revoked. Because we amended that in 2020, does that give us coverage, or are we looking at an issue with not having a bylaw in place?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I have done some work on the dates because initially our Freedom Campaign bylaw was under the Local Government Act, and then we made a Freedom Camping bylaw under the Freedom Camping Act. So I think time-wise, I need to look at it again because I was considering whether we were under a 5-year review or a 10-year review. And I think that I came to the conclusion we were under a 10-year review, but I need to look back at that.
Thank you. Yeah. So is the review date with the amendment of 2020, is that considered 10 years or 5 years from there, or are we going from the 2011?
That are the questions.
Yeah,
I can't.
So we'll get it.
I did look at it some time ago, but I can't remember now what those dates were.
So we'll get here.
And then there was some, we sort of paused work on it because there was some legislative changes, which I also need to look at as well, which was changes to self-contained motor vehicles. So there's quite a bit in this review to kind of unpack. So I just haven't given it any priority. Hammer Springs, Gore Bay Alcohol Plan, that one in the dog control bylaw are both 2028. 3 water services bylaw, and that's something I need to catch up with Hamish about in terms of what we might do with that. That's been paused while we waited for all discharge consents for townships to be issued. They have now been issued. So because of that, we will need to make some changes to the bylaw, and whether we want to do that in relation to the timing on water done well or where we're kind of at. I just haven't had a chance to have that conversation with Hamish. So that's where that one is sitting. That's a hefty piece of work. I kind of joked that it was one of the reasons why Steph got pregnant and left, because that was her last piece of work. So it's a bit of a, need to be careful how I allocate that one too. Another one. Waipara River bylaw, that's been floated around about whether that's a possibility or not. So that's more, in issues and options. Similarly with chapter 13, the biodiversity and the improved pasture rules, that chapter and those rules are causing us a few headaches at the moment. So that's been allocated to Andrew. Vehicle crossing bylaw, do we need one? Don't we need one? Is there another way of managing the issues that we're having with vehicle crossings? So that's an issues and options type thing. Gambling policy review, so that one is going on to someone's work program quite soon. And the reserve strategy for Amberley has been allocated to Andrew. Now you may recall through the discussion on the reserves management plan where we're talking about Eastern Reserve, and then we're sort of talking about, do we have a strategy for Amberley in terms of deciding how many reserves we need, in what areas, what sort of size reserves. So that's quite an important piece of work for Amberley. So that's been, because of Andrew's background and recreation planning, that's been assigned to him. Leasing of property policy needs to be allocated. A dangerous and sanitary and effective buildings policy, and that one has been allocated to Scott Rose, and he has already commenced work on that. And I'm not sure when that's coming back to, potentially that extraordinary meeting in October, or it will be to the November committee meeting. So that one's coming. And I think the consensus on that doesn't need any change, but we have to review it. And
so we've got all these things here that are coming up in there, and some of them seem quite generic to other councils and that. Or does all these come up, say, to Kaikoura at a different time than what ours do, or is there some like Waimak or Kaikoura we could have? You do one operation of drones over council reserves and lands, and another one. Can there be some joint work between councils? You know, just must be the same issues, and you're short of time, or will they all come up at different times, or?
They'll all come up at different times.
So why can't we get our diaries that some of them come up together?
Well, that's because we make these policies when the issues arise. So I think if you look at the leasing of property policy, does Hiranui want to have the same leasing of property policy as Waimakariri?
Well, I'm just saying, I'll just use that one of drones. You've got a 10-year period, you're talking about these things, and we've got a shortage of time and people. Operation of drones over council reserve land. Surely they must be the same in Waimak, or must be the same as Kaikoura. I'm just trying to think resources in that. Pick out a couple of policies that your guys work on one, they work on one. Why reinvent wheels? Must be too simple. There has to be a reason you're not doing it. I'm continually hearing you're short of people, but English is not the answer.
So the Pegasus Bay bylaws are an interesting example where we started joint work on that with Waimakariri. We did our bylaws at the same time. Their bylaw was different to ours because they prohibited things that we didn't prohibit. And then slowly those two bylaws have drifted apart in different directions. They're now asynchronous in timing because they made changes at different times to us and we knew theirs differently. And so they're no longer joined up at all, for example. What we do is we borrow heavily on people's existing bylaws. We don't just go and start from scratch and make everything up ourselves. We're not afraid to borrow.
And then we make them fit for purpose for our district.
Well, we have to have it right. I mean,
Well, I just like on Easter shopping, Sunday shop trading.
Yep, different all over the country.
Yeah. I think if we pick on the operation of drones one, is that will, and I think when we set these, I mean, these are internal policies, we need to be a little bit more clever about when we decide we want to review them. Because we said at that time, we will review it in 5 years, and the 5 years is almost up. But what we'll do with that is we'll dust it off and go, is this still fit for purpose? Yes, it is. We'll bring it back, say, we think this is still fit for purpose. Or, I mean, some of these things on here are new because the council has a discussion and the community says, oh, we need a policy or we need a bylaw on that. So there's this constant generation of new policies and new bylaws. So I think we need to be probably a little bit more critical when when we look at those things and say, is a new policy or a new bylaw actually the most effective way of achieving what we want to achieve? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is, if you look through this, this is not all of the policy strategies and bylaws that this council has. We have, a list, and that all generates extra work every time they need to be reviewed. So, you know, if we can try and get less, that would be great.
Great idea. I'll keep reminding you now.
Public toilet policy, I mean, that one doesn't have a review date, so we probably won't do anything with that until somebody says we should review our public toilet policy, but that one's just on there. You might not even know that we have a public toilet policy, but we do. Reserves funding policy, now that one is was supposed to be reviewed in 2018 and hasn't been, so probably need to dust that one off and see whether it's still relevant. Easter Sunday shop trading, so that was a 5-year review. Is that a policy?
I think it's a bylaw. I think if you're not going to meet the standard government requirements that you do have a bylaw.
Yeah.
And we provide an exemption for Monday.
That was to recognise Henry Springs.
Yeah, that came to council a year or two back, didn't it?
1 years back actually.
2018.
Only just yesterday.
I mean, the tree management policy is another one that gets bandied around every year. Oh, we need to review the policy, we need to change the policy, but you know, that's another some of these bigger pieces of work, I look at them and think that's not going to be a 5-minute job.
It's about prioritisation, isn't it?
Asbestos management, policy, I think that one is. I've got bylaw at the top, I need to change my table. That was obviously something that we did in 2020 and said we'd review it in 2025, so that one's for next year. We have an asset management policy and a disposal of assets policy. That probably does feel like we only just talked about that because that was in 2022. And that time we must have said, well, we'll put a review that in 3 years' time, so that's next year.
Sorry, just through the chief. So the asset management, if we look at the review date, or it's got 23, or at least 6 months prior to the adoption of the long-term plan. So did we not look at the asset management policies prior to the, and should it still be here if we've just signed off the LTP? You know, like, is that, am I reading that wrong? I mean, I'm just looking at, is that something that could come off the sheet as we see it?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to do is use the work plan as a to keep on top of everything that's coming.
So should the review date be in 3 years' time?
Yeah,
potentially. Yeah. Ahead of the next review of the long-term plan.
Well, it just that's what the policy says. The policy will be reviewed within 3 years of adoption and at least 6 months prior to the adoption of the current long-term plan.
So that would give us through to
2028.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess need to look at see whether we met did we actually consciously,
right?
We may have done what the policy says, but did we review the policy itself
To see if
at
it's
that
right.
time?
Yeah, okay.
And I can't recall. You
Can we maybe check on that?
No, I
Just-
can't, but I'm just looking at the version that's on the web page, it's still the 2020 version, so.
Yes, so I don't think that at the time we
Consciously reviewed.
no, and you've got I mean, it's because we've got these policies, all kind of all over the place. I mean, I went through an exercise of just going through all the ones on the website and working out when they needed to be reviewed and what the version that we have on the website and put them at least somewhere which is on the website.
Yeah, I think that's
So is the version that's on the website still, does it still meet our need, or has that been overcome by someone who we've done what?
I don't recall us actually, I don't recall the council looking at this policy and saying the policy is still fit for purpose. And we will, whether we will review it or not.
Yeah.
And that is it.
Further questions or comments on the work plan, action plan?
So I guess it's an action plan or a work program, but it's also doubling as a record of the policies so that you can sort of see what's on the horizon.
And I think that's good to see what the work program looks like in the future. We need to think about.
And for me, when I sign this work, it needs, depending on how complicated it is, needs to be assigned to someone who's got the capability to do their work. So with Steve, joining the team, even though it's limited number of hours, she brings a whole lot of more experience to tackle some of this more complicated work. Whereas Aidan is just a graduate, but yeah. So it's just managing resources and the work that's needed.
Okay, rightio. Well, it was a very full meeting and I feel very updated. And so with that, I will close the meeting in 12:40.